The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. It's Wednesday. I was just saying to somebody, happy hump day. For some of us, right? Some of us, our work week is slightly different, slightly off, but it's Wednesday. It's the middle of the week, no matter how you look at it. We're going to be with you live for the next 3 hours talking about autism and being the most effective, efficient member of a child's team who has an autism spectrum diagnosis. I know that that's something that's important to you. It's something that's really important to me. We primarily usually talk about ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, because we know that it's the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. By the way, it's effective for all of our kids. I think that's one of the most wonderful things about it is that we're not just talking about a small subsection of the spectrum that it's really effective with. It helps all of our children on the spectrum to reach their highest potential, because in truth, it's something that's very effective for all of us, whether we're on the spectrum or not. So a really wonderful thing to learn about. And because all of our kids are in different places on the spectrum, they come with a different skill level. We come with a different lifestyle and a different skill level. It's really important for us to talk about all the different tools, because it's really a creative art, and figuring out how you apply the tools is interesting, I think, but having the tools is the first step toward being that effective, efficient member of the team. So we do talk about it a lot. It's not the only thing we talk about. We try to keep you abreast of things that are happening in the news and some fun things that are happening, events around the world, really, at this point, and talk about what this journey is like and how we can survive it and thrive at the same time. So we'll talk about all those things, and Wednesdays in particular is a fun day. Lots of amazing things and amazing people who come in our doors on Wednesdays, and we'll talk about all of that in just a second. I want to remind you, though, that we talk about ABA, but I always have to give you guys the disclaimer, I am not an expert in ABA. I'm not a parenting expert. Please, I am so not a parenting expert. I am not an expert in autism. I'm not an expert in nutrition. I am a mom who is a former teacher, and I sometimes consider myself an expert in my child, but you know, it depends on what day of the week it is and exactly what time it is, and he would tell you that I am not an expert in him. But my son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5. He had the kind of autism that he regressed into it. So he had been speaking in sentences, and he had been making this awesome eye contact. I have pictures of it. I remember it, you know. And then it slowly went away. That caught me by surprise, because I certainly had heard about autism, right? And what I had heard was that, you know, either kids who just never developed, or kids that it was like lights on, lights off, and that the child went away, which seemed very scary to me. And then my child, I always describe it, it was like a thief would come in the night and take just a little piece of him, just enough so that I would be the only person who would notice. And when I would say to people, something's going on, I'm losing my child, they would tell me, pediatricians and others would say to me, it's all in your head, just relax, he's fine. And I lost pretty much, you know, 8 months because I didn't listen to my gut, and I listened to those people, and I listened to those doctors. But eventually, it got bad enough that I said something to a friend who it had gotten bad enough that she realized too that something was awry and said, I think you better get some help. And we started on a path. And, it was a scary, scary time, quite honestly. And I know that you guys can relate to that because I didn't know where we were going to get. I always said, man, if I just had a crystal ball, if I could just look in the crystal ball and know that everything was going to be okay, then I could do anything. I could get through anything. I could put up with anything if I just knew that we were going to be okay. And what I did along the way, I did a lot of things, but my husband and I did a lot of things that were great. We did a lot of things, not so great. And we made a lot of mistakes too. But one of the great things that we did was we connected. We didn't completely hide it. We connected with some people who pointed us in the direction of ABA. And you know what? Thank goodness. Thank goodness, because we found the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and they gave us back our child. Yeah, it took a while. And it's still taking time, right? He is still learning and growing. He's 9 now. And but he had virtually lost all of his ability to communicate. It wasn't even pointing. And that child talks now. That child chock your leg off. There are still things, as I was saying, that he is working on, but he is amazing, and he is in completely neurotypical inclusion, 3rd grade. In fact, today is the last day of school, so then he will be a 4th grader, and he is amazing, and he's the light of my life. And I think all the time about that crystal ball and how much I hoped for that crystal ball. There is no such thing as a crystal ball, but I looked to other families and I saw what they were doing and the progress that they were making, and it lifted me up. It was actually as good as a crystal ball. I didn't know where we were going to end up because our kids are all different, but I knew for sure that we were going to make progress. And I said, well, we're going to get moving and we'll see where we get. And I couldn't be happier. And I want that for you. I really want that for you. I want for you to see the progress and see your child learning and have that, okay, I have something to do. There's nothing worse than sitting there and feeling like I have no choices, I have nothing I can do, I have no control. Now, I know that there are lots of things besides autism that are weighing on you. Finances and access to services and finding the answer that you need for your individual child. Well, that's what I'm here to do, is to help you to find those resources. So please, this is meant to be a conversation. Take advantage of that. I want to be your new BFF in the autism trenches. If there's something that you need to know or you need to be connected with, I remember sitting there thinking, I'd see somebody on the news and I would think, boy, I would just like 5 minutes of their time to pick their brain. But I didn't have any access, except I do now on your behalf, not for me, but for you. And all you have to do is say, you know who I'd really love to talk to? And I will hunt them down in a nice way, and at least get them to Skype in with us or phone in with us so that we can ask the questions. You can ask them the questions, but I'll work my level best to get them here on the show. We do have experts from time to time. We have some that are going to come in today. We always appreciate it when you reach out and tell us what you want us to ask them, or ask them yourself. Lots of ways to participate in this conversation. If you're watching us on autism-live.com, all you need to do is look at the top and see if it says live or rebroadcast. If it says live, you have that box there that says your questions. You can type in there, hit enter, and it shows up here. It's great. It's wonderful. If it says rebroadcast, there are lots of other ways to get in touch with us. One of them is via email, and there it is for you there on the screen. And no matter where you are in the world, no matter what time of the day or night that it is where you are versus where we are, you have the ability to email us. What we do is we get that email, we'll cover it on the next available live show, but we'll also send you a typewritten response. And a lot of times the typewritten response doesn't come from us, because we'll farm your question out to an expert, and it starts a conversation with that expert for you and gives you access. It's really a very wonderful thing, and the people who've been using it have been saying how nice it is. More than anything, I want you to feel like you're not alone in this, because you're not. I am always inspired. Now that my child's doing better, I go to conferences and I get to go, behind the scenes and see how many people are working on helping us to help our children. It's really amazing, you guys. And I want you to feel it and have access to it. By the way, you can do other things besides emailing us. You can call us. We have a phone line that, whether somebody is there answering it or there's a message line that you can leave a message, we will get back to you if you leave a message. You can be patched into the live show if you want to talk to the experts today. We can just patch you in and you can talk to them yourselves. Or if you don't want to be on the air and you want to talk to somebody, you can call as well. You can also Skype. If you have camera capability, we can even put your picture up, but if you want to Skype in and just be audio only, we did that earlier this week with a dad blogger who's writing a book, Sean Colton. Want to remind all of you to go to Kickstarter.com, put in Sean, S-H-A-W-N, Colton, C-O-L-T-O-N, and at least give $1. Can't go wrong. He's writing a book called Legends of the Boo Monster. A really awesome dad who could use your support to do that. And he Skyped in with us audio only. If you have something that you want to talk about, Skype on over. We really enjoy talking to you that way. You can also talk to us on Facebook. In a little while, I'm going to give the question of the day, and some of you are already answering it on Facebook, and we're going to try to find some time today to go over some of your answers. And of course, you can also be tweeting with us. So Facebook and tweeting, all those different ways, whether it's a suggestion, a comment, a question, you've had it with something that I keep saying over and over and over again, and you want something new, whether it's a phrase or a topic, or there's a topic that I haven't covered, and you really feel like it's something that's important, and you want an expert in here to talk about it, let me know. That's really what we're here for. All right. I mentioned that there are other ways to watch the show. There are lots of ways that you can be watching the show. There's Blip TV that you can be watching us on. Pause, rewind, search a topic. You want to know every episode that we've talked about toileting, because sometimes we've had different experts talking about it. You can type in toileting and see what comes up. You can also do that, by the way, on YouTube. We have a whole channel on YouTube. And I really like watching on YouTube because sometimes I only have 5 minutes and I just want to see 5 minutes of an expert, and it's really convenient on YouTube. And also on iTunes, which is a really fun way to watch. You can subscribe to us on iTunes. We really love it when you leave us a review on iTunes. It's a very reinforcing thing for us. And we're on Ustream as well, so please take advantage of it there. In fact, all of these different places that you can watch us are free, which is a really wonderful thing. And all of the resources, asking questions, all free. There's no charge for any of that. Isn't that wonderful? So I hope that you will participate in the conversation, because not only I hope it will help you, but it helps all of us. Sometimes you guys ask questions that don't even occur to me to ask, And sometimes you ask a question that helps somebody around the world. You're never even going to know it, but your question informs them and helps them to find the direction they need to go for their child. So be a part of this. Let's all hold hands and help each other. Our journeys are all different, but we're all walking a similar path, right? And it's stinking hard. So let's do it together. Hey, we like to start every morning with something that we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This has been, I call it the warm-up. It's really meant to help us to make friends with the jargon, because, this is the jargon-intensive journey, right? You go to a meeting and they start talking about your child and you go, okay, missed that word, have no idea what that means. And I don't know about you, but in the beginning I go, I'm sorry, I don't know what that is. Can you help me to understand that? And then they define the word with a bunch more jargon and my eyes start to glaze over and I go, I'm so glad I got a tape recorder here, because I'm going to sit with the internet and have to Google all of this and have to, call a professor to understand what's being said. And it's your child that they're talking about. It's very, very frustrating. And it's not, they aren't words that you can berate yourself and say, boy, I just didn't build my vocabulary. It's jargon. There's no way that we would know what it is. So really important for us, though, to start to learn it just like we teach our kids in very small increments so that it's not overwhelming, and eventually we start to build our repertoire of jargon so when somebody is talking, things make sense. And we save time, energy, and money because sometimes when we're talking to an expert, we're on the clock paying them, right? So one word, one phrase, one anagram at a time. We give you an actual definition to make all of the scientists and the professional people happy. And it's good, it's important that we give the actual definition, and then I give you a working definition. Something that is a little bit less specific, quite honestly, but helps us to begin to understand it within the context of our individual children. And even if you don't get it from that definition, hang on, because sometimes you got to know 2 or 3 other words before it starts to make sense. But it will start to make sense, and then you'll find yourself starting to use these terms, and that's when you know you've turned to the dark side. Right? All the time now I say, oh, well, you know, I find that really reinforcing, and then I go, who said that? You know, talk like regular people. In any case, today's phrase, and I actually used this on the show yesterday, systematic desensitization. Now, it's possible that you have heard of this term before. But it's quite the thing when it gets applied to your individual child. So let's take a look at our actual definition. A type of counter-conditioning that associates a pleasant, relaxed state with gradually increasing anxiety-triggering stimuli until the anxiety reaction is extinguished. Yes, that's how the BCBAs talk on a regular basis. How fun. Yeah. Yes. And if this makes sense to you, great. But if it doesn't, here's our working definition. Exposing someone to unpleasant or fear-causing circumstances a small amount at a time in safe circumstances in order to reduce fear or anxiety. I mentioned yesterday that my son was having these meltdowns in this one particular grocery store. We would round the corner, and it took me, I didn't figure it out, but it took me forever to isolate and go, you know, this is only happening in this store and only in one area of the store. But then I had to call a BCBA in and say, what in the hey nani nani is going on here? Because I can't figure it out. And they looked at it and said, it's very clear, because when you step back and aren't emotionally in the situation, you can see ever so much more. And what it was there was a floor tile change. And we went from a very slick, smooth, shiny floor to a tiled floor. And what I hadn't realized was that anytime my son was walking on a tiled floor that was squares, he was kind of flipping out. There was visually, there was something sensory-wise that was not okay for him. And so he was having tantrums, and I was associating it with everything else that was going on, not with the floor. It just didn't occur to me. And in any case, you know, so they looked at that and said, this is why this is happening. And so they set about systematically desensitizing him to these tile floors. So they found a bunch of different tile floors in different situations, and they would take him on the floor, and they did it in this very systematic way that I can't even speak to intelligently because I didn't completely understand it, but there were brief periods of time when they would take him onto a tile floor and then remove him from the floor and reinforce him if he did not engage in the, you know, hysterical behavior. And they did it in like so slowly that I honestly didn't think we were making any progress. I was like, oh, they're not even working on it. But it was so slowly that he didn't notice that they were working on it until we arrived at a day that he didn't have a problem with it anymore. And my son skips across a break in a tile floor and doesn't even notice it now. But before that, and honestly, my child was having these huge meltdowns. I just didn't know that that's what was causing it, but it was. And there are all kinds of things that they can systematically desensitize our children to. I think it's really important to work with professionals. I'm always saying to you, you know, get a BCBA on your case. At some point, board certified behavior analyst, because you need somebody on the case. First of all, you need a third eye. And if you're going to have a third eye, it really should be somebody who has experience. I'm always comparing it to your car. You're driving in your car, and sometimes things like you hear a noise or whatever, and depending on the type of person you are, you might put it off or you might take it in to a specialist immediately. But even if you put it off, it gets to a point when something's happening with the car and it's disrupting your ability to go, and you don't just pull up the hood and start rearranging stuff yourself, right? And the reason why is because you're not a mechanic. You don't know all the things that a mechanic knows. I'm assuming you might be a mechanic. But you take it to a professional to deal with your car because you want to save time, you want to save money, and your vehicle is something you want to be safe in, right? And it needs to work. Well, the truth of the matter is that when it comes to behavior, if we decide that we're the experts and that we're going to figure this out, it's the same as looking at pulling up the hood of your car, right? And not knowing how these individual things work. If you go to a BCBA, it's somebody who, like a mechanic, has gone to school for it. They have a proficiency. They've seen a lot of different things. They know the interventions. They know what to test to see, okay, here's what the problem is, so that you're focusing your energy on fixing the issue, the problem, and not wasting time going, oh, well, I think it's this hose. I know, I'll replace this hose, and discover, oh, wait a minute, it wasn't that hose, right? It takes time, energy, money, and you might be unsafe in that amount of time. Same thing with our kids. So we need to not assume. Especially when it's something we're going to talk about self-injurious behavior later on today, especially when there's something, there's the potential for the child to be hurt. Bring in a BCBA. They're going to have that third eye to be able to look at things and have the knowledge to figure out what the function of the behavior is and devise an intervention plan. And your child will get better. So when there are things, if your child is having extreme anxiety attached with something, you can have an intervention plan that systematically desensitizes them, but you don't want to further traumatize the child. So really work with an expert. But if there is something going on in your home, don't just say, oh, well, I'm sure they'll outgrow it. That's a very big risk you're taking, and it's very unlikely that they're just going to outgrow something. Whereas if you bring the expert in, it can happen quite quickly. They were working so slow on the tile thing that I really didn't think anything else. I didn't think anything was happening, but it really was very quick by the time we were done. So I really encourage you to take things one thing at a time. One thing at a time. When it comes to fears, phobias, and anxiety-causing things, target it with an expert. They can use systematic desensitization if that makes sense with the individual child, and you will get great results. Okay. So we always have a question of the day for you, as I mentioned earlier. And you guys are already writing in on the question of the day today, which I love. You can do that on Facebook. You can do it on Twitter. You can call us. You can Skype us. All those wonderful things. You can email. But our question is, what has been the hardest thing for your child? What in particular, because there are some things when we start to teach our child and they start to learn, there are some lessons they'll just fly through. They just get them. They just needed to know how to learn, and we can do that for them with ABA. But once they start to learn, you get excited, they're just flying through different lessons. It's fabulous. And then they'll hit something that's just harder. And I've mentioned before on the show that my son just turned 9 and we do not have the riding on the bicycle with 2 wheels yet. But this is the summer of the bicycle. We are going to get this under control. We had to go back and find out that there was a muscular issue with his eyes, and that's been strengthened, so we should be able to do that this time. But sometimes when our kids are struggling with something, it's because there is another issue. And it's important for us to look at that. I think, for me, there are times when I shortchanged my son because I would look at something he was struggling with and I would go, okay, well, we've hit the limitation here, and that's probably the autism, and okay, it's time to be sad and move into acceptance, and which was all a big steaming pile of what. there were things that needed to be adjusted, and then he could go back to flying. So I hope that by the end of the summer, I'm going to be able to say to you that he and I are going on long bike rides and that there are no training wheels. How exciting will that be? But that's really what he has struggled with. And it honestly, at least in part, was being affected by the muscular eye issue. So, but love to know from you guys, what's the hardest thing for your children? What's going on in your world that's just really hard for your child to learn? All right, our topic today, too, we always have a topic of the day. And our topic today, as all this week, is challenging behavior. And we are going to specifically talk about self-injurious behavior a little later on in this hour. In fact, some of the different things that we're going to talk about self-injurious behavior, then at 10 o'clock, we have Evelyn Gould with us. And I have asked her in particular to come in and talk with us about bullying today. This is quite the topic, right? And I know we had a little bit of an experience with that this year, too. Really kind of surprised me because I've been looking at bullying in a certain way, and it was shocking to me that my son would experience that in 3rd grade. And I've come to look at it in a different way, and I've been listening to a lot of different people talk about it. And Evelyn's a BCBA, and she has a really interesting take on things a lot that is very informative for me as a parent. So I've asked her to come in and talk about bullying. And then at 11 o'clock, I'm joined by my co-host, Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson, who drops in every Wednesday at 11 o'clock to do Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Nancy's wonderful. She's the executive director of Autism Care and Treatment Today, ACT Today, as it's known. And they provide grants to families all over the world for the things that they need. It's really an amazing organization. And I love the fact that the family gets to specify what it is that they're asking for when they ask for the grant, whether they're asking for a trampoline, or they're asking for a fence, or they're asking for support for elopement, whatever it is. That's what ACT Today does, is give grants for the things that are requested. So a really remarkable organization, and Nancy's a remarkable lady. Boy, I always say, man, I'm glad she's on my team. You know how some people, they got that energy and that passion and that drive, and I just go, man, I'm glad we're on the same side of the as you and I. Woo! She's good. So we're going to talk about some things happening in the news, and we have a special guest today, a woman named Gabriella, and who has a cookbook out, a kids cookbook that is amazing, and she specializes in teaching kitchen skills to children with different disabilities and making it a natural environment training opportunity. So you're working on math, and you're working on social skills, and you're working on language skills while you're cooking, and making it nutritious and making meals that your children would like. I know somebody wrote in the other day about, your child eats just pizza and French fries and chicken nuggets, those kinds of things. And so that's one of the things that we're going to be talking with her today about. How do we get our kids involved in the kitchen? How is it useful to them? And what can we do to make it as healthy as possible and not have that battle at the table? Because if we're including them in the kitchen and we're working on other things, it's a win-win-win, right? So that will be during the 11 o'clock hour. Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, my co-host, Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson. But we're going to take a little bit of a break here, and when we come back, we are going to do our play tip for the week. So stick with us.
So basically, when we talk about how to teach safety, there are so many levels and areas of safety to teach, but we try to first start off in teaching a simpler level. Mm-hmm. So for example, let's say we're trying to teach the child to stay within their yard and not run out of their yard. The first thing that we're probably going to work on is inside, in a more controlled setting, teach them to stop when we say stop. Or come when we ask them to come. And then when they're successful in the structured, non-distracting environment, then we're going to take them outside to the front yard and teach them, okay, when I say stop, you're supposed to stop.
Stop. Good stopping, Jack.
We're also going to make sure that when we initially give them the instruction, we're at a close enough distance that we can help them to stop, so then they don't develop a pattern of running away when we've called them and not stopping. Right. Once they're consistently responding within a close distance, then we're going to gradually increase the distance so that they're responding from a further distance. And then we can also teach some kids that here are your boundaries and this is the area you have to stay in. Or when we go somewhere, you have to always be able to see me. And let's say, or you have to be an arm's length distance away from me. So teaching rules that the child will follow when they go out in public.
And there are so many different areas. You know, we've been talking about escape and elopement and things like that, but, you know, then there's also stranger danger. And that becomes a dicey thing, and that I think it's individual to each and every family. You know, I know people who say you're not allowed to talk to strangers, other people who say you're not allowed to talk to strangers unless I'm also talking to them, if I'm talking to them. And then, of course, you know, we have to be careful about teaching them which strangers, because if they're lost, obviously we don't want the kid who's hiding in the bush as the policeman goes by, you know, how to recognize who in the community. So there are so many different lessons that I can think of that a child has to be taught in order to fully be able to generalize 100% of the time how to behave within a circumstance. And
we go piece by piece then. So for example, with stranger awareness, we could possibly teach it through photographs first and say, you know, is this person a stranger? How do you know that they're a stranger? If they're a stranger, what can you do with them? Like, can you ride home with them? No. Can you accept something from them? No. Well, what if this, you know, giving them many different scenarios, like you were saying, so that they know exceptions of when it is okay and when it's not okay. And then also acting it out as well. Yeah. So I say, I'm so-and-so and I'm at the grocery store and I'm offering you a sample of candy, but I work at the store, you know, and mom is with you. So knowing when to make exceptions and when it's okay to do something versus not doing something. And then, of course, sometimes you can also set up a situation. So for example, you tell your best friend that you're going to the store and that maybe your child's never met that person before, and they approach your child and act out something that you've been practicing. And, you know, fortunately, because you've set it up, you know how your child might react if it actually happens.
So that rehearsing something over and over and over again is really going to be key.
It's very important.
All right.
Yes.
Safety, it's the biggest issue. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. And I promised you the play tip of the week. And I don't know about you, but my son right now is in the very last hours of school for the year because he gets out early today and it's the last day of the year. And now there's this gaping hole of what are we going to do over the summer. And I always try to give myself a roadmap. I try to give myself things that I'm focusing on. When he was having therapy, his therapy team had things that I was part of the team, so we talked about all those things. But I always had things that I was working on in particular too, and that my husband and I were working on with him. Because there's always more time in the summer, right? And I have mentioned to you guys that don't let the summer go. You know, get proactive, and you don't have to spend a whole lot of money. If the camp thing is not happening for you because of where your child is at or because of where your finance is on, don't feel guilty about that. But if you have time or there's someone working with your child who has time, I really recommend Skills. Skills is amazing, and they're running a special right now that if you buy 1 month, they're going to give you the rest of the summer for free. So basically, you're getting 1 month, you're getting 3 months for the price of 1 month, which is really amazing. And again, if you look at that, and it's very inexpensive, right? But if you look at that, you know how that's a relative thing, right? If you look at that amount and say to yourself, you know what, I don't have that, I can't afford that, would you do me a favor and write to me and let me know, because there are organizations that give grants for that. Don't miss out, is all I'm saying to you. And don't feel bad about that. You know, people helped me along the way, and I like to help you to find the people who can help you. But don't have your child do without. Skills is an amazing thing. And I mentioned that, you know, we're going to work on bicycling. We're also working on writing this summer. The whole family is going to take a typing it's a game, a typing game together, and keep track, because I'm a terrible typist and I want my son to be a really fast typist. And there are a couple of other things that we're going to be working on as well. But in terms of play, it is a time, summer is a time for our kids to have, if you know, it's a automatically enforced break, right? And we can take advantage of that. It should be a time when we play to their strengths and keep shoring up the things that they're a little bit behind on. So depending on where your child is and how you're going to map things out, one of the great things that you have time, hopefully in the summer, to work on is creating a playtime where the child is going to work on transitions, moving from one activity to another. And with very little kids, what you can do is create a visual schedule. And you can do this in lots of different ways. If you have a program on your phone that allows you to, we had that the gentleman who developed AirTalk, you can do it on his program, and I think his program was $2.99 for a phone or for a pad device, where you can take pictures of something and enter it in. It helps you make flashcards, and you can order them in different ways. They were using it primarily for communication, but you can use it as a visual schedule. So you get up in the morning and you pull out your phone or your device, and you've taken pictures of things that your child likes to do, which is a fun activity, right? And you put it all in order and say, okay, so, and you can put a clock next to it if you want to, and say, okay, first we're going to go for a nature walk, and we're going to pick 3 different flowers. And if you're working on a color, you have a picture of 3 blue flowers there, right? We're going to pick 3 blue flowers. And then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to have a snack, and you have a picture of the snack that you're going to do. And then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go swimming. And then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to do some, you can call it whatever you want. You can call it play, you can call it lessons or learning or color time or whatever it is that you're working on, and have that in pictures on the device. So you're showing your child a visual schedule of what they're going to do. It may all be play, but one of the things that there's a lesson in skills, actually, and I've mentioned before that all the lessons that are in skills were the lessons that my son had from his therapist. So while years ago we weren't working on skills, the therapists were still working on these same lessons with him. And when he was little, he had a play schedule, because he only ever wanted to do one thing, only ever wanted to play with one toy. And they needed him to have more flexibility. And they wanted him to work on transitions to get him ready towards kindergarten and get him ready for preschool. So he would have a visual schedule. And back then we had it on cardboard and Velcro, right? Poster board and Velcro. But, you know, it was, okay, first you're going to play with your Disney characters, and then you're going to play with your blocks, and then you're going to play, dress up, whatever it was. And he was on a timer, and when he, they would say, okay, you got 10 minutes to play with your Disney characters, and the timer would go off, and they'd say, okay, it's time to go to the next center, getting him ready to transition for school. But they did it all on a visual schedule, so he could understand. He didn't have the receptive language, but he could see the pictures, and he knew what those things were, and he could know that, okay, I'm going to this thing, and I'm going to play, and when the thing dings, then I'm going to go to the next thing, and it's going to be okay. So much of the time when we have a child who has a difficulty transitioning, it's because they don't know what's going to happen next. And, you know, if you're loving what you're doing and somebody says, okay, done, move on to the next thing, it might be something wonderful, but I don't know about you, but I'm like, oh, but I was having so much fun doing this. I'd like to keep doing it, right? And if I don't have the words to say that, it really feels like, and especially if I don't have the understanding of, I get to come back to this some other time. You know, we were talking about this yesterday, for kids, everything is happening now. It's one of the things that we look at them and they enrich our experience, and we're a little bit on the jealous side of, oh, it's all happening now. It's all fresh. It's the discovery of it. But remember, some of that is anxiety causing. I don't know. I'm having fun doing this, and I don't know that I'm ever going to see this toy again. So if they have the visual schedule, it helps them to know what's going to happen, and it creates an environment in which it's easier to transition. And if we can build that skill, we can eventually fade the schedule. But even in kindergarten, most teachers have on the board, here is our schedule. Even in 3rd grade, my son had on the board written out, no pictures, but, you know, here is the order in which we do things. And, you know, you go to high school, you get a printed out schedule. I know that I have lunch at this time, and I have this class next, and I go here next. And even as adults, a lot of us really enjoy having a planner, or now, you know, it's all digital. In any case, now is a great time to have a visual schedule for your child and a plan. It'll be great for you, and it'll be great for them. And I think you'll find that you'll have much less challenging behavior and get more done. How much better can it be than that? Okay, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we are going to talk about self-injurious behavior, a subject that is really emotional and difficult, but we're going to look at it in a way that hopefully will help us to understand the kinds of things we can do to prevent that. Stick with us.
I am grateful for Autism Speaks because they allow families like me to have hope.
They're working towards having these children live better lives.
There's a space for you. Yeah, there's a world for you, and there's a community that is behind you.
And one that has really been able to be the singular voice for people who are involved with and who care about autism.
I do have autism, but I don't let that become a disability for me. Autism Speaks is going to continue to help those who need it, and just look at all the stuff they've done so far and you will be impressed.
3, 2, 1.
And you need to support the walks. We have to raise awareness, but we also have to raise funds to do the work.
I'm grateful for Autism Speaks for one main reason, is they are allowing me to focus on the research.
The work that Autism Speaks has been doing is critical for keeping autism research on the radar screen.
We proclaimed 2 April as the World Autism Awareness Day. I'm very proud of the UN and thankful Autism Speaks.
Getting the health mandate bill passed in New Jersey particularly, we needed to be able to make an argument, not just do this because it's the right thing to do, but do it because it's cost effective.
When everyone else told me nothing was wrong with my son, I got information from a website that told me something wasn't right.
I am so proud of Autism Speaks for creating these beautiful ad campaigns, which have reached people who are not affected by autism and have also created a greater climate of compassion and understanding.
It's been really great for Bachman to have gotten involved with Autism Speaks early on. I think everybody here feels like they really make a difference.
To make sure that we generate as much money as we can for Autism Speaks so we can all solve this puzzle together.
There's no way we could have come this far without our families, without our supporters to date, but there's so much farther we have to go.
and everybody's invited to join this cause. We need all the help we can get to make the difference we know we can make.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're taking on a subject right now that's really difficult, I think, for all of us to even think about, let alone talk about, but it's a reality for a lot of people who have children on the autism spectrum, that our children will at some point engage in self-injurious behavior. I want to reiterate that I am not an expert on behavior or autism or any of those things. I'm a mom. But I can tell you that having been here and having different experts come in, this is an area that for me as a parent, I don't know, I don't want to speak for any of you, but it's so emotional. When my son was little, he engaged in self-injurious behavior. And I think there was an element of shame that I had, that I clearly must be doing something wrong if my child wants to hurt himself. And I had a really hard time emotionally even voicing that. That's hard for me to say now, but that's really the space where I was in, and there was shame attached to it. And it wasn't that I didn't talk about it at all, because I was trying to get him help, but I really felt like somebody was going to say to me, well, this is all your fault. It felt that way. And the first time that I had therapists from the Center for Autism come into the house, and we talked a little bit about the fact that at the very first clinic, we talked about the fact that my son was banging his head on the kitchen floor on a regular basis, and that it was so upsetting to me. And he would run into the kitchen, throw himself on the floor, and deliberately hit his head until he would scream in pain. And it was just so horrible. It's hard to even talk about it and revisit those moments, because it was just that bad. They talked to me about the A, the B, and the C of the self-injurious behavior. But again, I think because there's that emotional component to it, I really didn't get it. And I was just starting with ABA, and I just really didn't get it. But it took until the first time that a therapist was in the home and this was going on, and I started to react in the way that I always do, the consequence that I always did, because if your child hurts themselves, whether it's deliberate or not, you run to them, right? It's just instinctive. And I had tried to get to him before he could get to the kitchen and do it, but he was fast. He's always been faster than me. He came out of the womb faster than me. And yes, I'm slow, but he was fast. But anyway, I got to the kitchen and I went to scoop him up, and I started rubbing his head, because that's what I had always done. If he hit, if my child is crying and he hit his head, whether it was deliberate or not, I'm going to try to soothe him, right? Wrong. And in this particular instance, the therapist was able to point out to me, much to my chagrin, that it wasn't that I had caused the behavior, but I was now engaging in a dance with my child in which I was reinforcing the behavior and ensuring that it would continue, which is different than making it my fault. I want to be 100% clear, because here I was in this space of, well, this has got to be my fault, because otherwise my child wouldn't try to hurt himself, right? But again, I didn't cause the behavior, but I was doing the dance with him to make sure that the behavior continued, which was really not what I wanted to do. And that therapist stayed with me and talked me through a process where I didn't allow my son to have circumstances where he could actively hurt himself, and that I didn't give attention to when he made attempts. Really hard. Can I just tell you how hard? And the therapist was saying, after we secured the area so that he couldn't hit his head on the kitchen floor, he would have had to have hit it on the carpeted floor. And he said, start doing something. You're still in the room with him. You're not ignoring him, but start doing something else, and don't baby him over the fact that he's crying because he hit his head on the floor. And I started watering the plants, and it was terrible. He was pulling on my legs and screaming and crying, and I just kept watering the plants. And at one point I started to laugh hysterically because I was crying and laughing. It was one of those horrible moments where you just feel like you're on the edge and about to go off. But the therapist stayed with me and talked me through it. Can I tell you, I could not have done that without somebody there with me. I couldn't have made it through. There was one moment, in fact, when I started to relent and I was like, I need to pick him up. I can't do this. I need to pick him up and soothe him. And this therapist said, you can't. You're about 15 minutes, 20 minutes in now, and if you pick him up and soothe him now, what you will have taught your child is that if he hurts himself, that you will then shower him with love. So anytime he wants to be showered with love, he's going to hurt himself. Is that really what you want to do? And of course, then I just, the tears, and I was like, no, that's not what I want. And he said, not only that, what you'll have taught him is that this time he had to go 20 minutes to get you to do it. So this is gonna happen harder and longer, and you really can't relent now. I could not have gotten through that moment without him, excuse me. And that was the last time my son ever hit his head on the kitchen floor, because it didn't work. It was painful, and it didn't get him the attention that he wanted. Now we talk, and we've been talking all week long about how there's a function for every behavior. And believe it or not, when our children are engaged in self-injurious behavior, there is a function to it, and it's still usually one of those four main suspects, right? Attention, escape, wanting access to someone or something, and the last one, which is the hardest one, is that when it is in some way automatically reinforcing, that there's something about it that has a payoff. Now, when it comes to self-injurious behavior, you wouldn't think that that was possible, and yet it is, and it is frequently the culprit. We had Kate Gutschel from SOS in a couple of months ago, and she was talking about the phenomenon amongst blind children that very often they will gouge their own eyes to the point of losing a physical eye, and that you have to be very careful and cautious around some blind children to prevent them from doing that. And the reason why is that if you take and close your eye and you push against the eye socket, there is a spontaneous burst of something, whether it's color or there's something. And for blind children, pushing on their eyeballs still, although they're not seeing sight when they open up, there is often that response. And it's very reinforcing. Even though it hurts, to be able to see something is very reinforcing. And so they will sit, and it's like a toy that they will play with and push and push and push to the point where they hurt themselves. We can understand that, right? Well, for our children with autism, frequently they have other things going on that they can't convey to us. So if a child has a headache and the child is banging their head against the floor because they have the headache, if you've ever had a pain where in the moment that you hit it, there is a release for just a second. It's like it's too much stimulus for the brain, and so there is a moment's relief, and then it's followed by more intense pain. But for our children, that immediate gratification of a millisecond of where it's relieved, they don't understand, I'm going to make it worse if I keep this up. They just have that moment of the cessation of the pain. Kids who are constantly, pressing on a chair or leaning over a chair and pushing on their stomachs, because they have issues with their stomach. They're having pain. So it's really essential that we don't assume when it's self-injurious, that we get an expert who comes in and looks at it and says the function of this behavior is that it's self-reinforcing. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to give a replacement behavior that mimics the result they get from it, and so that we can eliminate this negative behavior. That, the child who bites on their arm or constantly to the point where they've left bruises on their arm, and then they discover that, it feels good for their teeth. Well, we can give them something else besides their arm to bite that still gives them the same sensation. It's not always easy, right? And that's another reason why you got to have an expert come in so that we get to the solution quicker. And hopefully don't put our children at risk. If we monkey with it, there's always that possibility that we're going to make the behavior worse, which we don't want to do with self-injurious behavior. For older kids, when we get into, unfortunately, now, you know, the tweens are even at risk now for things like cutting. And I want to remind you that it's not just kids on the autism spectrum that are involved in self-injurious behavior, that we see teenagers and those tweens who will sometimes do things like cutting or other things that are self-mutilation. Really serious issue, not to be dealt with completely on your own. Get a professional working on it. They're going to sit and look at what the function of the behavior is. For one child, it may be attention. For another teenager, it may be that there is something about it that feels good. There's something else that they're in pain, and there's something about it that feels good. But what I want you to know more than anything else is that no matter what the function is, it can be changed. You can give a replacement behavior and you can deal with different things, but you need to have an expert. If it's something that's medically driven, then, you know, the expert's going to be able to help you to discern that and say it's time to go to a medical doctor to be able to look at this situation in a different way. But don't let self-injurious behavior go. Don't say to yourself, oh, well, it's the autism. I really did. I was like, oh, well, you know, that is the autism. And I thought there's no hope for that. There's nothing I can do about it. It's scary to me. It's shameful to me. But I was completely wrong. My child was helped in the course of a day. That may not be typical for everyone, but that was the case for my son. He was helped in the course of a day, and never, ever, ever since then has he beat his head against the kitchen floor. I offer you that story as hope that you will pursue whatever behavior your child is engaging in, self-injurious behavior, with an expert so that you can put that in the past. All right, we have to take a break. We're going to look at the A word right now. This is the amazing documentary that's being made by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. This is a little boy, Jack Riley, who is about to turn 3, and on this particular day, he's about to become a big brother because mom is getting ready to go to the hospital and give birth to his baby sister. And you know, this little boy, our kids pick up on what's happening, and he's having an off day. He's had a lot of good days in a row, and he's having a bit of an off day. He's feeling a little bit like he wants to assert himself, and we see the therapist having to pick and choose, what demands do I want to put on this child, and once I do put on a demand on a child, I gotta follow through, but I don't want it to become a combat zone, right? But our kids pick up on the things that are going on, and everybody's got a bit of different energy going on because it's the day of the birth. So take a look at the A word. And when we come back, we are going to be joined by the fabulous Evelyn Gould, and we're going to take on bullying with her. Stick with us.
Do you think Jack knows what's happening today?
Not a clue. We asked him where the baby was, and sometimes he points here, and sometimes he just points here and says belly button. So he's either getting a baby sister or a belly button. He's not sure.
Good. What about this one? It's a rooster. Yeah. Another one. Sure. Which one do you want? Both. Okay. Here you go.
Jessica gave Jack Riley a partial vocal prompt to get him to ask instead of demand the puzzle from her. Last week, she had to prompt him by saying,
Say, can I? Sure.
But now she only makes the sound to get him to ask. Eventually, he will need no prompting.
Case. Case? Yes, I want case. Case. Yes, you can. There you go. Should we dance and sing? Should we sing head, shoulders, knees, and toes? Yeah? Okay, let's sing the song first, though. Sing song first. Ready? Head. Head. Sing first, and then Dumbo. Sing first.
Now that Jack Riley has language, he negotiates with Jessica instead of tantruming or crying like he would have.
Eyes and ears and nose and no. Good. Head, shoulders, knees and toes. Whoa! You almost ate there. Yeah, you finished the song. Okay, come here. Whee! Whoa! It's like you're Superman, huh? It's like you're Superman. Come here. Jack Riley, come here. Come here. Thank you. Sit down. No. No. Jack Riley. No, look at my eyes. No, sit down chair. No, sit down chair. No, sit down chair. No. Jack Riley, you need to sit down chair. Thank you. Oh. Thanks. Good boy. High fives for good sitting. Thank you.
What happened?
That I was actually reading notes from other therapists that are on his team that he's been non-compliant when it comes to sitting in the chair. But right now it just seemed like he didn't want to do it because you asked him to do it, or I asked him to do it. And then I was prompting him to sit in the chair. But then once I just backed off, he sat on his own, like it's on his own terms, basically. But I didn't want him to get away with, if I asked him to do something, he has to do it. And that applies to when I ask him to do other things too, so that he doesn't learn that if I just ask him something and I don't follow through, then I don't have to listen to Jessica. I'll just listen to her whenever I feel like it.
Right.
And he's been really exercising just because he can vocalize what he wants now. He wants it every time he asks for something, and then if you don't give it to him, then that's what happens. I do want him to learn that just because he asks nicely doesn't mean he'll get everything every time.
Are you excited? You excited?
He's sleeping.
Are you sleeping?
So what time are you going to leave, Mike?
We have OT at 11.
Oh, you still have OT today?
Yeah.
Isn't it going to get close?
Yeah, well, that's the life of that's our life now.
Let's go back out.
I'm going to go, I got to go take a shower because we're going to have a baby. See you later.
Later.
Welcome back to Autism Live. You were just watching the A Word, and they're getting ready to go to the hospital in that episode because they're having the baby. And that it's like the I Love Lucy wiki is coming, but the new baby is coming. But right now we are joined in the studio by the fabulous Evelyn Gould, who is a BCBA, and she's here with us today. I asked you if we could take on the subject of bullying, to talk about it a little bit, because it is a new fascinating topic for me that I've always heard about bullying and always been concerned about it, and now this year it's a part of our world, and it's unexpected. It's unexpected in terms of what it looks like to me, and I'm kind of shocked that it's unexpected, and I'm gaining a new understanding, and I want to know more. I know you guys have been asking about these topics, so I don't know what my expectation was, Evelyn, but I thought that bullying was this thing that happened to people far, far away, and that there were bad people who did it. And I just think that, with rose-colored glasses, that I don't know any bad children, because I don't know any bad children. And it isn't just bad children that engage in bullying. So I'm getting this bigger perspective of it about what it is, but I'm at a loss to know what to do. And I think, since everything else that has worked in my life to date has something to do with behavior, I want to talk to a behaviorist about this from a behavior standpoint. So talk to me a little bit about bullying.
Well, where do we start?
Yeah.
Well, I know we talked about it before, about some study that had come out, and there's not been that many studies on bullying with children with special needs in particular. But the studies that have been done do seem to suggest that children with special needs might be at particular risk of bullying.
Yeah.
And there's a variety of reasons for that, but with children with autism, there's the kind of
things you might expect, like perhaps they are suffering from some rigid rule following difficulties or inflexibility issues, and maybe they engage in certain behaviours that draw attention to themselves that are that the children perceive as strange or odd or funny, and so on. So what we do know is that our children are probably quite vulnerable to bullying.
Yeah. Yeah. And not only are they vulnerable to bullying, but they're vulnerable to think that someone is bullying them when in fact that isn't necessarily what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, there's a variety of things. So yes, you can have children. I've worked with children who, for example, I can think of one child who had difficulty with understanding when things were accidents.
Yeah.
So when a child, say, bumped into him or trod on his foot, I remember treading on his foot by accident once, and it was like all hell broke loose.
Yeah.
And he did not understand that somebody could do something unintentionally, and he then would fly off the handle and engage in very aggressive behaviours, which then really shocked the person who had done this accidentally, so to speak. So that there's skill deficits there. There's other things to think about, is that sometimes other children can perceive children with autism as bullies themselves.
Yes.
Because that maybe our kids are engaging in, like, they don't understand how to appropriately socially interact with someone, or they don't understand how to share, or they want something and don't know how to appropriately get it, or they just are not following the social rules, or they just don't have the understanding of how other people think and so on.
So sometimes they can even say something that is wildly inappropriate, that another child takes as bullying when the intent wasn't there.
Yes, exactly. So like you can have, sometimes our kids don't understand like white lies, for example.
Yeah.
And your kid who's just being honest and just not meaning to hurt anyone's feelings, because they don't maybe even have that ability to understand other people's feelings, so they're just saying like, oh, you're fat, or whatever it happens to be. They're just observing something and just saying it.
Right. That could be very detrimental to another child. I was saying to you yesterday that my new perspective on bullying, I really, I'm starting to see that there are the three different elements for me. How I'm starting to look at it is that there's the child who's bullying, there's the child who's being bullied, and then there's everybody else who's witness to it.
Right.
And that our child can be anywhere in that equation, and that there are different ways of looking at it. There are different skills, and it's a little overwhelming to me. And I'm noticing a couple of different things, that in particular with my son, there was some actual bullying that happened, right? But then he had such a reaction to it that anything that somebody said, he thought that that was bullying. And so now I feel like even if somebody were to bully him in this moment, what he would say about it would be taken as, oh, well, you overreact to everything. I'm afraid that that's the kind of thing that happens. And I'm also afraid that at some point my child is now going to be the bully because he sees that it gets a reaction.
Yeah, and there is some evidence that could happen, and one of our major goals as behaviouralists is to teach our children how to learn by observation. And we teach our kids these wonderful skills, like how to observe something and then do it, but we don't want them observing and doing everything that they see.
Right. And you also mentioned something yesterday, too, that there are instances in which a bully will say something to one of our children, and because they don't understand, in that moment, the child doesn't register that it's bullying, and maybe they seem a little oblivious to it, but that doesn't mean that it's any less bullying, or that it's okay, and that there is the possibility that as this child's skills grow, that they could have a reaction to it after the fact.
Yeah, right. That is something important to think about, that our children may not be aware that they're being bullied. And so, I mean, that's problematic as on of itself. Like, at the time, we want to make sure that just because our child maybe isn't aware that they're being bullied, doesn't mean it's okay to keep bullying the child. But also later on, when that child starts to develop more complex kind of thinking skills and their awareness of themselves in relation to other people and what other people are thinking about them and so on, when those skills start to develop, there's a danger that the child will then have the ability to kind of realize that they were being bullied, and that might bring up all sorts of emotions and stuff for them.
Yeah, really incredible.
I mean, even I was thinking about this in the car on the way here, and thinking how even I as an adult and I have all these wonderful cognition skills and so on, sometimes I'm in an experience and something's happening or someone's saying something to me, and it isn't until later on that when I process it, that I think, that was really mean. Yeah. And why did that person say that to me? That was so mean. And I start like thinking more and more and more about it, and it kind of escalates into a lot of really hurt, angry feelings.
Yeah.
And so there's no reason to think that might not happen with our kids as well.
Absolutely. Good point. Point well taken. So can we start to look at bullying from a behavior standpoint? Because so much before ABA came into my life, things would happen, and I was just talking about this, I would be overwhelmed and feel like victim, and that I couldn't do anything about the fact that my son was engaging in challenging behavior. And what I learned through ABA is that if I looked at it as behavior and as communication, that I could take steps and that I could change behavior as a result of changing an antecedent, changing a consequence. So my question that I'm walking around with right now is, can I do things with my son to change his perspective on those three different places: bullying, watching bullying, being bullied, and are there things that I can be doing? Because the kids, here's the big shocker for me. I always thought that if somebody bullied my child, I was going to hate them. I don't. I mean, in one case, the bullying that was happening, while I don't believe that the child fully understood what he was doing, I know that his intention was to upset my son, and he did a good job of it. And this is a little boy that I absolutely adore. And I know he's feeling some things, and that was why he did what he did. He was lashing out because of things that were happening other places for him, not with my son. And so I want to understand, and I want to be able to do things to help that child too. And seeing that we all need to be concerned about that kind of thing. So talk to me from a behavior standpoint.
Well,
educate me.
Well, obviously as a behavior analyst, then we're going to be thinking about antecedents, behaviors, consequences, and so on, and like how we can change behavior. And I would think that we want to change behavior. We want to change the behavior of kind of what's happening around the context of the behavior that the bullying's happening in. So how other people who are observing the bullying, what do we want to do about that? The way the teachers, the school setup, whatever it is, we want to change the environment. And that is also changing antecedents. And then we want to also change the behavior of the bully, and we want to change the behavior of the child who's being bullied, and all those things are going to be important. Just changing one part might help, but it's probably better if we look at the whole context that this is happening in. Yeah, it's a big machine. Is what it is. Exactly. So if we start with just thinking about the child who's being bullied, what we want to, as a behavior analyst, I'm going to be thinking, well, why is that child being bullied? What is it? What is it about them what skill deficits are they showing that might be contributing to them being a target for bullying? What behavioral excesses or, what problem behaviors or otherwise are they engaging in that are drawing attention to them, that are making them targets of bullying? And then I want to put in place interventions that are going to build those skills. So one thing that we know is that children who make friends or have good friendships are less likely to be bullied. They're definitely not going to be bullied, but they're a lot less likely to be bullied. And then, of course, having peers that are supportive, this idea of peer advocacy. And if you have friends, then you're more likely to have people around you who are going to help protect you from bullying, or are going to tell someone if you're being bullied, or so on. And I think peer advocacy strategies have been quite successful actually at decreasing bullying. So I'm going to look at, like, with the kids that I work with, what skills can I teach them that is going to help them make friends and help them decrease any behaviors that are drawing attention to them. I just want to add, though, in terms of what you're saying, in case anybody's mistaken, we're not saying that it's the child's fault that they're being bullied, but they're more vulnerable to it. They're more likely to be picked on. And, just like we used to see the Jack LaLanne, you're too young, but the Jack LaLanne cartoon where he would be the scrawny guy on the beach and somebody would kick the sand on him, and he decided, I'm being picked on because I'm scrawny, so
so I'm going to go and work out, and then nobody's going to pick on me anymore. We're not saying that it's okay for the bully, but if you can strengthen something so that you're not as vulnerable, it's a great way to, and we were going to work on these things with our children anyway, right? So,
and you know, what I'm saying is, from my point of view, is that I'm not, it's not that I'm not interested, but I don't want to just spend a lot of time talking about it and deciding whose fault it is, or, you know, why it's happening and so on in that way. Like, I just want to know, how can we make this better?
I think that's the parents' cry.
How can we just help this child right now to be less vulnerable to being bullied, and help them deal with it, other children and so on. And, you know, this is just one part of the picture. We also have to look at what can we do about the bully's behaviour? How can we help them not be a bully?
Let's talk about that, but let's take a break and come back and talk about that, because it's all very fascinating. And I want to tell you what my son said to me yesterday. It's amazing. So stick with us, because we're going to talk more about bullying with the wonderful Evelyn Gould, BCBA. Stick with us.
ACT Today, or Autism Care and Treatment Today, was founded in 2004 by several passionate parents who believe that access to early, effective treatment is vital for individuals with autism. Together with Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet, the world's leading provider of therapy for autism, this group created ACT Today to do just as the name implies, take action immediately to treat autism spectrum disorders.
A lot of families and parents and even physicians don't yet accept the fact that we are recovering children with autism.
In 2006, inspired by her struggle to get treatment for her young son Wyatt, television producer and author Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson and her husband Reed hosted a backyard benefit for the foundation called Denim and Diamonds for Autism. Tens of thousands of dollars were raised, and in 2008, Alspaugh-Jackson took the helm of ACT Today as executive director.
This country has to come together to save a generation of children.
With a dedicated board of directors, a small but committed staff called the A-Team, as in autism, ACT Today is making a huge difference in the lives of children across the country. Grants that fund programs for behavior therapy, special needs schools and summer camps, medical needs like diagnostic tests and special diets, basic safety equipment such as helmets for children who repetitively bang their heads, and fencing for those who wander, assisted technologies and assistance dogs.
Hi, my name is Max, and I love my iPad too. It's so great. I can take photos.
In 2010, ACT for Military Families became the first national campaign to benefit military children with autism.
I'm Joe Montaigne. As a father of a daughter with autism, I know the challenges that brings.
ACT Today continues to educate and raise national awareness on the need for early and intensive intervention for an epidemic that affects at least 1 in 110 children.
I called on November 1st. And I'm like, how am I going to get notified? How are you going to let me know? And they ended up looking, and they informed me that he had received the grant, which was like a blessing from above.
ACT Today, fulfilling its mission of helping families with autism, one child at a time.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're here with Evelyn Gould, BCBA. We're talking about bullying. I was sharing with her during the break that, you know, and we've been talking about this from time to time on camera and off camera, that my son went through some bullying stuff this year. And I've been, you know, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And talking to people and, you know, trying to come up with a plan and, you know, thinking about writing some sort of play to work on with the kids from that perspective. So I, you know, busy mom. And I picked him up from school yesterday, and he was saying about how we were talking about the summer and kinds of things we're going to do over the summer. He said, I need to get some stickers over the summer, a bunch of stickers. I said, okay, do we need to stop and get some now for tomorrow? No. We're just doing the practice for 3 days, and then we're going to do the real thing in the fall. I said, what real thing? A couple of weeks ago, there had been an incident during choir where a child had said something in the bullying nature to my son, and my son started to cry, and one of the other girls in choir stepped up and said to the boy who said something, "That's not okay. You've done that to me before. That's bullying, and you're not going to get away with it." And then, you know, hugged my son and said, "It's okay. He's done it to me before too. I'll stick with you." And together, these two children, during recess, my son had a sticker book of Star Wars stuff at school, and so he ripped out all the stickers, and they were offering a free sticker to kids who would sign up to be on their no bullying group that they're starting in the fall. And so if they signed up, and they had the little piece of paper, and if they signed up, then they got a free sticker. But it was just a practice, because they're going to do the real thing in the fall. And he even said to me, "I'm not going to have as much time to play, Mom, because this is going to be very serious." But I was so proud of him that I'm sitting around spinning my wheels trying to figure out what I'm going to do to help him, and he kind of took care of it himself. And I'm a little amazed. You were saying he's using his ABA tools.
Yeah.
He's reinforcing them beforehand for not engaging in certain behavior. I'm very impressed with him, and I could weep. But I also...
And you know, there's absolutely fabulous problem-solving skills going on there, and it's really, really, you should be very proud of him. I'm proud of him.
Yeah, really. Well, and you should be. I mean, it's all a part of... I certainly didn't do it by myself. He had a lot of help from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders to get to that point.
And when I'm saying that we want to teach our kids skills, like, those are the types of skills that we want to teach our kids. We want our kids to be able to solve social problems that they encounter, so they're not reliant necessarily on us to try and fix everything for them. I mean, that's quite an advanced skill, but that is where we're trying to get to, and to be able to for our kids to be able to tell us when there's a problem and then help figure out their own solutions. And this idea of, like, getting peers involved is just so important, and I think that really is probably the key to really fixing a bullying problem in a school, because we can talk to teachers, and teachers can get trained and be very effective at what they're doing, but they're not there all the time, and they're not really the whole environment.
Yeah, because most of that happens as they're coming onto the school grounds, as they're in recess, while they're in lunch, as they're leaving the gate. It's not stuff that is within teachers' control. But really amazing, and I have to say too that if it hadn't been for that little girl who stepped up and said, "No, you know, you did this to me before." And by the way, the boy who was doing and saying the things, who had been a little bit of an issue earlier in the year, when she stood up for my son and said, "No, you're not going to get away with this," then he felt bad. And the next day he came in and apologized to my son, and has been really sweet to him the rest of the year. It's very amazing. And here I was thinking, I have to do something, and feeling guilty because I haven't figured out what it is yet, but in a way the kids are sorting it out for themselves. I don't want to leave it up to them, because I think they need guidance, but it's kind of amazing.
And again, thinking about it as a behaviour analyst, we've got a consequence strategy that was in place, and that was the little girl saying, "That's not okay, and this is not okay, you're not getting away with this, and I'm going to tell somebody," and then potentially going and telling somebody. So you've got your consequence strategies, but your son and her are now putting in place the antecedent strategies, which is the preventative strategies, and that, as behaviour analysts, we're very much about preventative strategies and changing the antecedent. So by going and offering these stickers and setting up this anti-bullying group, they're hopefully going to prevent the bullying, because that's really what we want. We don't want to just have effective ways of giving consequences to someone who's already done the bullying. We don't want the bullying to happen in the first place.
Right, absolutely. Well, fascinating. I know before the break you were saying that there were things that we can do with and for the bully in terms of behavior, and I'm really interested in that. You know, what kinds of things do we need to be thinking? Because for the kids who are being bullied, we were thinking of how to strengthen skills so that they're less vulnerable. But what kinds of things can we be doing with the bully?
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Well, I mean, that's assuming that we know who the bully is. One of the problems can be that we don't necessarily know who's doing the bullying. So it might start by educating teachers, and as parents, you're going to be the best advocate for your child, and you're going to be the #1 person who's going to be going to your school and saying, "My child's being bullied," or "I'm afraid that my child might be bullied in the future," and you're going to probably want to get something put in your child's IEP and so on. But you're also, once you've made the school aware, then it's going to be about the school figuring, you know, being vigilant and observing what's going on and trying to figure out who the bully is or who the bullies are. And then I guess approaching the parents of those children and seeing if you can work together with some kind of putting in place some strategies to change that child's behaviour.
Yeah.
And it might be something very simple. It might be like, in the case of your son, where it just requires a simple consequence of saying, explaining to them that's not okay, what you're doing, but it may not be that simple.
Yeah.
It may require a lot more input. You may even have to get a school psychologist involved or something like that, or a BCBA or someone involved if the problem's severe.
But I think what I'm hearing is that we don't have to just accept it and say, okay, well, that's that child, and let it go, because I don't know where that ends. You know, that, you know, my son's in 3rd grade right now, and it's really interesting to watch the little seeds of how this starts to take place, so that by the time that they get into high school, it gets ugly.
Yeah, and the other thing is, we know from the research that has been done is that bullies, as well as those who are bullied, but bullies, the outcomes for bullies in terms of like mental health issues and so on is really quite poor. You know, bullies end up suffering a lot as well as the people who are bullied. So it is really important to help those children as well. I mean, some children who bully will grow out of it, so to speak. I mean, my brother is one of those people. He was a complete nightmare. One of my brothers was a bit of a nightmare when he was a child, but once he developed a bit more empathy and a bit more understanding, and his cognition, you know, his social skills developed, then he stopped, and he's now a wonderful human being, and he was, you know, once he grew up a bit. But that doesn't happen with a lot of children. A lot of children don't grow out of it. They're struggling with a lot of issues for various reasons. You know, we need to think about that. We need to think about the function of why they're doing what they're doing.
Right.
And they are going to need help, because they are not, you know, the prospects for those children can be quite bleak.
Yeah. It can be really hard, though, as you were saying, you know, identifying who the bully is. And sometimes, depending on the school, I've heard parents report this before, that the school knows who's bullied your child, but they don't release that information to the parent. So there's a little bit of a loss of control sometimes, in the hopes that other people are taking care of what. I think it's really important that as parents we take it really seriously. And if you're aware of the fact that your child is bullying, that's a great time to pull out all the stops, put things in writing to the school, say it's happening.
It's very important to put things in writing, because really, if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. Yeah. And so, if the sooner you get stuff in writing to your school, the better.
Yeah. And I think too, you know, I think sometimes we worry about stigma, that, oh, I'm going to be the parent that's constantly, you know, creating a problem, and if I'm going into the IEP, I don't want to be making waves about different things. And I think it's important in these cases where there's multiple players that you don't sit quietly by the sideline, because you stepping up and saying, okay, even if I don't know who the bully is, there's a child that's bullying my child, the school knows who it is, and if you put it in writing, they're forced kind of legally to deal with it.
They are.
Or there's consequences for that. It may mean that that child gets help that helps them in a way that you can't even imagine.
You can't even imagine. You know, other children as well. It may help other children. Prevent other children from being bullied. It may create a whole change in the way the school approaches bullying, and really, more importantly, it's going to help your child, and you're just always thinking about your child. Don't, you know, ahead of any worry that you have about what the school thinks of you or anything like that. It's not about the school, it's about you and your child.
Yeah. So don't be afraid in terms of that. Be a squeaky wheel, especially in this
And there's a lot of resources and people out there who will help support you. You don't have to feel like you're alone in like dealing. If you're feeling like you're getting into a battle with your school, you don't have to feel totally alone. There are organisations and things out there that have put together a lot of resources for parents. They have put together things like letters, like templates for letters you can write if you're feeling overwhelmed about where to start with that. There's procedures to go through if you're not getting the results that you want from the school. There's people who very simply outlined the laws in terms of bullying and harassment for special needs children and so on. So there's a lot of people out there who want to help.
Yeah, there's even toll-free numbers on, there's a government site, I think it's www.edu.gov that you can go to, and there's toll-free numbers that you can call that they'll tell you who in your state and who in your county can help you if you're having issues. But really important to put things in writing to the school. Email counts. We had legal counsel on a couple of weeks ago, and they said email counts as in writing. So
yeah, I mean, I think one of the first steps is just to write a letter to your principal expressing your concern and asking them if they have a bullying policy in place, first of all, and get a copy of that. So that'd be your first step. And then ask for a meeting, and then if you're not getting anywhere, then probably going to one of these sites and seeing who it is outside of the school that you should be contacting next.
Really good advice. We're going to take a break and come back. I'm just checking the time here, and come back to talk more with Evelyn Gould. So stick with us. Hi, I'm here today with Cecilia Knight, who is the Director of Training for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And she's going to talk to us about something that I'm not entirely clear on, tacting. Tacting is when you make a comment on the environment, and then another person may reinforce that with non-specific reinforcement. Can you explain to me what the difference between a tacting program is and an expressive labeling program? In an expressive labeling program, typically the therapist holds up a card, maybe with a turkey on it, and the therapist would say, "What is this?" referencing the picture. And the child would respond, "Turkey." The child is labeling the item. With a tact, it's a comment on the environment. So it can be evoked by a smell. So if I walk into the house and I smell Thanksgiving dinner, I can say, turkey. Or if I hear gobble, 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 I can say, that's a turkey. So it's a comment on the environment, which is different than just naming the item. How do you get a child to comment on the environment? That's got to be hard. It is. We use different prompts. Most of the time we use vocal prompts. For example, we may look through a book and point to the picture of an item and say, "Oh, look, it's Nemo." Say, "Nemo," and then reinforce the child for responding. Or we may say, "What do you see?" Say, "Nemo." And then eventually we would want to fade our point away. So I may say, "Look, Nemo," and then the child is referencing that and then also saying, "That's right, I see Nemo." And then later fading completely away so the picture of Nemo itself evokes the comment. If we're working on something auditory, maybe we have a cow on the table and we play the environmental sound in front of them, maybe give them a vocal prompt to say, "It's a cow," and the child may say, "It's a cow." And then we might fade the visual of the cow and they just hear the sound. And we prompt them by saying, say, "It's a cow," or "I hear a cow," and then eventually fade until the sound itself evokes the comment. The goal is to get towards spontaneous tacting, where the child can walk around and comment on the novel things in the environment that he hears or sees. And so that's a great way to sort of bridge to that point. Tacting is really important to get to higher level lessons of interverbal behavior. Commenting on things that are private events, or commenting on things that I can't see that you're feeling, like your stomach hurts. But it's important to have those tacts in place so you can get to those later programs. Welcome back to Autism Live. We're here with Evelyn Gould, a BCBA. We've been talking about bullying in some very practical behavioral terms. And I was just mentioning to her that we do the question of the day. And the question of the day today was, what has been the hardest thing for your child? And overwhelmingly, you guys have written in about making friends in social situations. And this is one of the things that we were talking about that we can do if our child is being bullied, that we can target helping them to overcome certain things so that it's easier for them to make friends, which will make them less vulnerable to bullying. And so we're sort of right on point today because totally different question. What's hardest for your child making friends? And here we are saying that part of what makes them vulnerable to bullying is not having that core support group of friends. So what kinds of lessons? I've been talking on the show about, here we've got this space of time coming up this summer, and usually you have a reduction, unfortunately, in services, but it's time that we can be more effective, more efficient members of our child's team and target different things. I've told everybody there's a special right now on skills, which is what I use. Buy 1 month and you get the whole summer for free. What kinds of lessons are in skills that we could potentially work on? You know, every child's different, so we're going to do different lessons for different children. What kinds of things are in there that might help our child to gain friends in an easier way?
Well, I mean, very simple lessons like or simple skills like your child knowing how to initiate an interaction with another peer, which seems just so obvious, but sometimes our kids just don't even know how to approach a peer, and they really want to. So not all kids with autism, it's kind of a myth that all kids with autism don't want to interact with peers. That a lot of people seem to think that, like they have no interest in socializing, but that's really not true. A lot of our kids really want to, and they just don't know how to, and that's quite heartbreaking to watch. So working on our kids being able to know what's an appropriate way to approach a peer, and then once they learn how to do that, it's like how do you start a conversation, or how do you join in a conversation if there's already one going on? How do you talk about something that people are interested in? Like how do you teaching our kids play skills? Like we talked before, Shannon, about teaching. It's important to teach our kids how to play things or be able to engage in certain things that their peers are interested in. So, I mean, that could be just teaching them how to do it, or maybe you have to work harder and you have to try and help them be interested in those things. Also, you know, knowing what to do when a peer approaches them, like maybe, and they're playing, and teaching them things like how to share and how to take turns and things that, how to follow kind of certain rules or be flexible about rules and stuff like that, because other children aren't as patient as us. And and they don't have ABA team teaching them what the rules are, and sometimes they don't know. And my child will stand there and go, but you have to take turns. And, you know, like, oh, not everybody knows that. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've often actually worked on with my therapists is teaching them how to play like children. Because one of the problems can be is that when we do have a child that we work with from very young and we start playing with them, is that the therapists tend to act like adults, and they let the child win, and they, you know, let the child lead the play and so on, and then I come in and I totally just play like a child and annoy the child, and just everyone's getting upset. But that's what our children are going to have to deal with. So it's very important that the therapists that I work with know how to play like a child and challenge our children and help them cope. And it's amazing what comes up once I go in there and start playing like a child. Suddenly, this child who seems like they don't have any difficulties, all of a sudden, you know, they really are having a lot of difficulties, and that then helps us program for that. So we're then, oh right, he really does have a problem with if I win, or he really has a problem if I'm like, no, I don't want to play that, I want to play this, or no, I'm going to go up this mountain like this, and he doesn't want me to, you know. So the flexibility thing is a really big issue, I think.
Okay, so really wonderful things, and there are individual lessons for each one of these things and skills, but there's other things as well that, like, you know, just in terms of, and again, we should say too that you're not left completely to your own devices figuring out. You take an assessment to see where your child is, and then you're given a pool of activities that are suggestions, and then you get to pick and choose. But it's really fascinating the way you guys, because you were a part of the team that created some of these things and skills, and it's really fascinating how you guys put it together. As a parent, I love it.
I mean, yeah, I mean, there's so much. There's so much. It really depends on where your child's at and as to where you're going to start, because you know you've got your language skills that you need to be able to have a conversation or be able to communicate with others. So it doesn't have to. We're not just talking about massive conversations about complicated things. We're just even talking about simple communication. And then that can be vocal or non-vocal. And then you've got your social skills, like taking turns with someone, how to initiate an interaction or invite someone to play with you, how to those types of things.
Even prosody. Yesterday our word, or yesterday the day before, our word was prosody. Our child could potentially be being bullied because of their lack of prosody, or even having a difficult time making friends because the friends don't understand what they're saying because they're not inflecting in a way that they can be understood.
Yeah, and I've actually had a child who we had to work on prosody with. He was doing absolutely fantastically in so many ways, but then he had some inflexibility issues, and prosody was causing him problems because the kids were making fun of him. And he was having a really hard time. So yeah, even those kind of skills, teaching kids how to understand, like absurdities. You know, and jokes and humor, and then even like things like general knowledge. Like we would teach our kids like some general knowledge stuff, so they actually have some stuff to add to conversation and so on. And then you've got a whole other bunch of skills which are related to understanding what others are maybe thinking, or like making inferences about what someone might like to do based on their preferences. And those are really, really important social skills that allow us to have good relationships with people. And reading people's body language, you know, using body language and so on.
Yeah, because if a child, if they're, you know, we, in our terms that as moms, with my group of moms, we talk about how some children are bossy and some children are inflexible, right? And they could be mistaken for the same thing. But if your child is going up to a child and saying, hey, I want to play cars, and it's a little girl who only likes to play Polly Pocket, you know, you're not going to have a successful interaction. Whereas if your child thinks to themselves, okay, well, I know that Luella likes Polly Pocket, and they go up and say, hey, Luella, can I play Polly Pocket with you? Chances are your child is going to be more successful in that interaction. It's a lot of things to think about, and I've shared recently that my son did a project at school, and there was kind of something that was going on, and later on when I talked to him about it, I realized that he was doing a better job of doing perspective taking than the other children in the classroom. And that if we give those skills to our children, that sets them up for success. So having them consider the other person's, I think they're going to be better adults. We have seen from time to time, and I know it's that time of year in the summer, I was saying this last summer because we had 3 young men working here at CARD that had recovered from autism. And I said, really, you know, sharp guys, virtually indistinguishable from everybody else who's working in the building, right? Except, you know how I could tell them from everybody else? They were extra polite. Didn't you, like, if you went to go and get on the elevator and they're like, oh, let me hold that door for you. How are you today? Don't you look lovely today? And they were just uber polite.
They're very charming.
Which I have to say, as a mother, I kind of love that.
Very charming and very, I don't even know what the word is, but just aware of other people differences, like very kind of accommodating, or they have an understanding of like different people are different, and that's okay.
Yeah, and acceptance.
Different people think about different things, and that's okay. It's quite amazing.
Right. A peacefulness and an acceptance about, you know, I do things my way, you do your things, and there's no judgment about that.
You know, live and let live. Very much of live and let live.
Yeah.
attitude. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, I really think we should make all children go through these lessons. And actually, too, can I say just another, because I talk about the executive functions curriculum all the time and how I think everyone should do it and how I'm using it. And I was saying today's the last day of the school year and that I have all these things, the teacher gifts, and I make DVDs for the kids of all the pictures. And it's always just like a scary time of the year for me because there's way too much. And frequently, I was up too late last night. I'm just going to admit that. But I was done by 11 o'clock. And this is the first year that he has gone to school and that I've gotten the teacher gifts together and gotten the DVDs together and been done at 11 o'clock. Usually it would have been 2:30, 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. And it's because of the executive functions curriculum, because I've started to think of what do I need to do to set myself up for success. Now, you know, I'm a work in progress.
Well, I was working on mine yesterday because I talked to you a bit, Shannon, about trying to draw flow charts. And then I talked to my supervisor about stuff. And then as I was doing these flow charts and trying to figure out how to do them, I was thinking, this really helps me. This is really helping me plan stuff and understand how stuff works.
Yeah.
And, you know, so we're all working on our.
Yes.
Or we all can work on our executive functioning skills.
Yeah, definitely. I'm hoping that next year, maybe it'll be 9 o'clock the night before that I'll be done. Or maybe it'll be wild and crazy and I'll be done a day early. That would be shocking. We'll report back next year. But so I'm just slightly underslept today as opposed to being completely underslept and harried. And everything still got done, which is nothing short of amazing. What else on your list there?
Well, I think
so many things,
I know
right?
there's
You got
so many
pages
lessons to teach, but that's only part of it. So you definitely need to work on lots of these different skills, and there's a whole bunch of stuff. But it's really important that we can somehow figure out how to give our kids the opportunities to practice these skills. And at first, it's important to be practicing with yourself or a therapist or someone who's teaching these skills, so that your child gets someone who's responsive to what you're working on and knows what you're working on before you start taking it out into the real world and dealing with what that brings. So, but once you're ready, you've established those skills and your child's fairly confident in using those skills, it's really important to try and figure out how you can get peers over, and I would suggest that starts off by being a peer that is going to work with you and work with your child and support your child's learning, and that's easier said than done.
Yeah.
So we talked a bit about this before, and it's quite difficult sometimes to find a peer that's willing or is suitable for like working on peer skills with your child. Yeah. Sometimes we tend to I've tended to maybe choose a child who's a wee bit younger than the kid that I'm working with, or a wee bit like behind in terms of development compared to the child that I'm working with, because that can kind of help your kid it just kind of helps because the kid's not quite where your kid's at, so they kind of are doing a bit better, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense, because I tend to go one way or the other. Either have a child who's significantly older, like not, an adult, but, somebody who's almost a teen or a teen, because they're going to have a little more patience and you can talk to them ahead of time. Or the child who's younger, who's not going to be frustrated and have an expectation that your child can or cannot do something that
exactly. So that's what I was coming to as well. So, or you might want to choose, sometimes we do choose the children who are a bit older, and kind of quite often you can find it, or I would find a child who's like excited about being a teacher, or just being involved. So it's like it's a minefield of trying to find the right child for your child, and it can change depending on what you're working on.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, one of the things that I think we're going to show in a few minutes, that because it's hard to find the right child, and sometimes you got to have a plan and you do all that, and then other times you just got to throw caution to the wind and go to an event. And one of the things that I loved to take Jem to, which always gave him an opportunity to meet new people and have an opportunity to talk to them, was that we would go to the Home Depot on Saturday mornings. They have on the first Saturday of the month, so it's once a month, they have a kids workshop. It's free, and they give them a kit that you open up, and it has instructions, and they have to hammer and screw drive and paint whatever the thing is that has something to do with the current season or month. The July one will probably have something to do with the 4th of July, like it'll have a flag in it in some way. And so so they have these tables set up, usually outdoors, although I think in different places around the country in the winter it's indoors, but usually it's outdoors. The kids are all out there, and they're, you know, between the ages of 5 to say 10 or 12, and they stand at tables, and the parents are there too, and they interact, and then they usually get a chance to play with the whatever the toy was that they built together, and it's free, and it's a place where you know you can take your kid, and you're gonna have the opportunity. Somebody's going to be standing next to them, and at some point they're going to say, hey, can you pass me the glue? Or your child can say, you know, what color are you going to paint it? It's a and it's free, and you know you're going to find kids
you
there.
really are going to have to be creative about finding those opportunities, because it's very hard to find peers sometimes. And then, you know, remembering that at first you're going to need to support your child with the peer, and you're probably going to need to direct the peer to say the right thing, or prompt the peer to engage with your child, or whatever it is, and setting up these kind of opportunities, like you're saying, like seeing an opportunity for your child to say, can you pass me the whatever, or what are you making, or something like that. But eventually you want to fade yourself out of that. So remembering that the goal is that your child's going to be able to do this without you there.
Right. But not being afraid to prompt for a while, just fading it back.
You definitely shouldn't just go from, you know, working with your child at home to just, here you go, off you go, and use your skill, and assume that your child will be using it. I mean, some children will, but that's not normally the case. Like, normally the kids, you're going to need to support them a little bit, or a lot, even in the beginning, and then you can gradually fade yourself out.
What I love about, like, the Home Depot is that the opportunity is there on a regular basis, and I can take my child there, and if my child blows it with a child, that, you know, he says the wrong thing or ticks the child off or whatever, the next time we come back, he's not sitting next to that child. So when you blow it with a kid in the classrooms, you know, you get kind of stuck with a situation, and it builds throughout a year. But when you go to those kinds of things, you can just stand in a different place and you never see that child again. But if they make a connection and you come back the next week or the next month, then they stand next to each other and they start to interact, and you know, forge a friendship. Really kind of amazing. But again, you know, people can be using skills over the summer to shore up some of those friend-making skills that are so important. There's kind of an endless number of lessons.
There is. I mean, we can all improve on everything, but I think it's very important to try and do some kind of assessment and figure out where your kid's at, and what is the basic, what are the most fundamental basic skills that they need first of all, and then working on those, and then you can build on these other things. Don't get too overwhelmed by, like, the massive amount of stuff that you feel like your child needs to learn. You just get in at the bottom with the fundamental things that they need to learn first.
Okay. All right. Well, it's time that we have to say goodbye to you. It's flown by so fast. But we will have Evelyn back in the studio next Wednesday. You're available to come back next Wednesday. And as always, I want to encourage you guys to write in if you have questions, even if it's, you know, we're not going to be live here in a second, but if you have questions for Evelyn, all you have to do is write in. We know where she works, and we can find you and ask you questions. Yes? Thank you so much. This was such good information about bullying. It always enriches me when you come in here and tell us something, and it gives me things to work on. So useful. Thank you so much. All right, we're gonna show you that Home Depot clip. Then we're gonna come back for a short period. But at the top of the hour, we are going to be joined by the fabulous Nancy Allspaw-Jackson for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. We're going to be talking about things happening in the news, but also have a special guest who's going to talk to us about cooking with our children on the spectrum, and why that is such a beneficial thing to do, not just nutritionally, but we can be working on math skills, language skills, all those wonderful things. So stick with us.
Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, and this is my son Jem. We're here today at the Home Depot. You might know that Home Depot is famous for giving free classes to adults on lots of things like tiling and other home crafts. Well, they also have free classes for kids as well. It's called the Kids Workshop. We love doing that, don't we, Jem?
Yeah.
It's cool. So come on inside with us and let's do a craft.
Yay.
The Kids Workshop is a program that's been around with Home Depot almost since we've been a company, and it's been developed to allow kids in the community to come in and give them an opportunity to build something, to be able to create something and be able to take just simple wood pieces and put them together with nails and hammers and screwdrivers and then paint them.
So you do this every first Saturday of the month.
Any Home Depot that you go to on the first Saturday of every month between 9 and 12, you can join different associates throughout different stores and build these projects with these kids.
And do they have to do anything beforehand, or can they just show up on that Saturday?
All they need to do is show up. We have all the tools, all the materials that the kids will need. We have aprons that we give to the kids that they can take home and maintain their pins. They get pins on a regular basis for completing projects. With that, they can keep track of how many projects they've done. And
it's all free.
It's all absolutely free, all provided.
Which is wonderful. And Wilson, I have to say, you know, you guys devised this for all kids to be able to do this.
Correct.
What I particularly love about it as an autism mom, it gives my child a place to come and learn a new skill, to socialize with kids of all kinds.
Absolutely. And that's what we're here for. Home Depot is definitely loves to be involved with the community and bring the community in to work with us. That's what we love to do.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I love to watch, that's my little boy, that's him, that's Jem, and he loves to do those crafts at Home Depot. I think it's such a smart thing that Home Depot does, because as a parent, I bring my child, and while I'm there, I go, oh, right, I need this from Home Depot, and I usually end up buying something, although you don't have to. You're under no obligation to buy something, but they're also creating the next generation of customers, right? Because my son loves to build things now, and he has all of his little things that he displays, and he has all the little pins. For years, I didn't let him wear the pins on the apron because when they're little, I wouldn't advise that. But hang on to them because they'll get to an age when they can, and they're very proud of them. They always get that certificate. It's a really fun Saturday morning event. Again, that's the first Saturday of each month, and I'll try to remind you as we approach the first one in July. And even see if we can find out what the craft is in July. I mentioned that we always try to get to the viewer responses to the question of the day, and I specifically wanted to get to some of them today because they go hand in hand with all the things we've been talking about today. So somebody wrote it in and said, making friends. By the way, the question of the day was, what has been the hardest thing for your child? So we have making friends. Fear of food, hands down. And that's interesting to me because our question, or our jargon of the day today was systematic desensitization. And that is something that we can use with food. That we do see that, I don't think that this person is exaggerating at all, that we do see children who literally have a fear of certain foods. If you've been watching The A Word, and I hope that you have, and if you haven't, you really want to go and visit their YouTube site if you're having a child who is having fear issues with food, because this is very definitely the little boy in the documentary. It's an ongoing documentary, and all you have to do is show a banana to that child and he responds as if you have chased him down a hallway with a knife. It's just, you know, it's a very real thing. And they show throughout the series how they are systematically desensitizing him. One of the things that they did was that they went and got some really awesome Melissa and Doug wooden fruits that, you know, they all Velcro and they come apart. You can peel the orange and segment it and put it back together. By the way, there's the YouTube address for the A Word. In any case, using fake food as a bridge to play with food and get a little systematically desensitized to it, and playing with different textures of food, offering rewards for different foods. And you can watch that unfold. That it's kind of an amazing, amazing journey. But we don't have to just leave our children being afraid of certain foods. That is something that can be worked on. Another person who says communicating with peers. We really see a trend here, don't we? Making friends for us too, with a sad face. To cut his hairs. That this is something that's really, really, really difficult for an individual child. Again, systematic desensitization, setting up small, bite-sized, very safe environment circumstances in which, like letting the child know, we're not going to cut all the hairs on your head, but we're just going to cut a little. And then we're going to reinforce you for not freaking out about it, but doing small little increments. And for each child, it's different. You may want to get some help and support in that area, but it can be changed. Big social gatherings. Hey, that's not just our kids. That's a lot of people that have issues with big social gatherings. But again, you can systematically desensitize and maybe go to a big social gathering and stay for a minute. And I know, because you want to be at the big social gathering sometimes, and your child just isn't able to hack it. But you can take your child to big social gatherings where you have no plan of staying for a minute. Maybe it's somebody's party that you don't know. You take them in for a minute and you're out, and there's reinforcement for it. And then the next time you go in for a minute and a half and take them out, and there's reinforcement. There are ways of getting our children to the point where they can handle things in small doses, and we can then stretch that out like pizza dough. Making friends and dealing with any kind of social situations. We just heard Evelyn Gould talking about some of the lessons and skills that can help our children to do that. Another person who says if something should happen and it doesn't, time for school Mondays, and it's summer, so no school, or going to the babysitter's house today because I called off work, he melts down. And here's a big thing for a lot of our kids, that they have issues with inflexibility. What's funny about that is that the truth is that we all have issues with inflexibility. It's just that our lines are in different places. Aren't there some things that you're just unwilling to be flexible about? There are certainly things that I'm unwilling to be flexible about. And I shared that about a year ago, I was with my son and I had asked him to do something and he wasn't wanting to do it. And it was something that I wanted him to do it in this specific way. And finally I said, look, I need you to do it this way, okay? And he said, well, why? And I said, because I just do. Can you just do it the way I need you to do it? And he was arguing, saying, well, but my way is just as viable. And I said, I just need you to do it that way. And he looked at me and he said, Mom, do you have autism? And in that moment, I was like, because I had been sitting there thinking, he's being inflexible. He's being inflexible. It was me that was being inflexible. So we all have inflexibility issues on some level. It's just a matter of where your point is, right? But we can help our kids. There are lessons in skills for flexibility. We can help our children set up circumstances where we let them know, okay, here's a circumstance where you're inflexible and we're going to work on this. And, here are the rules. You're going to do this, and then you're going to get rewarded for it. It's really kind of amazing. So, as with all things, don't just accept the status quo. We can target these things one at a time and make progress. All right. It is time for us to take a break. When we come back... Oh, okay. We're not taking a break yet. So in any case, lots of different things that we can be working with our children from that skills program. I mentioned to you that right now the special is that if you buy 1 month, you get the rest of the summer for free. You really can't beat that. It's a very low cost. I don't want to quote the price and be wrong, but I know that it's less than $80 a month. And if that, so that would be $80 for the entire summer, which is, and it's less than that. I don't know how much less than that it is. But I know that it would benefit you and your child. And if that cost is too much for you in this moment in time, please don't be self-conscious about that. There were plenty of months when on this journey I could not have afforded that. But I want you to do me a favor. If that is outside your budget right now, do me a favor and write to me and tell me that that's outside your budget, and just tell me where you are in the country and leave a way for me to contact you, whether it's email or whatever, so that I can chase down and see if there's somebody who is giving grants who can help you in your neck of the woods to be able to have that granted to you. But don't go without. There are lots of places and lots of people who give grants, but don't say I'm not going to do it because I can't afford it. If you will promise me that, I will promise you that I will work to help you to find ways to be able to cover that. I mentioned that in just a few minutes we're going to be taking a break, and when we come back, we're going to be joined by the wonderful Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson, and she is the executive director of Autism Care and Treatment Today, one of those organizations that gives grants for things that families need. They give lots of grants for skills, and I think that that's a wonderful thing. They give grants for CARD learning. They also give grants for things like fencing or taking your child to a doctor and being diagnosed, to have assessments done so that you know how to, how many hours your child really truly needs for ABA. Because a lot of times we're in a circumstance where our funding source is going to assess our child for us. And while there are an awful lot of good people in the world who are honest and do not succumb to pressure, there are an awful lot of people who I would say would probably have a hard time knowing, if there's not funding for something, writing down on a piece of paper truly how much a child needs. I think we can all understand the ethical and moral dilemma of that if they write it down and it's not available to the person. But the truth is that we need to get an actual factual, what does the child need, and then progress with that. You don't want somebody in a circumstance who's assessing your child who is also tied to the purse strings of the people who are going to give out the funding for it. It's just a conflict of interest in my mind. So sometimes you have to bite the bullet and go, a lot of times you have to bite the bullet and go and get that outside assessment that is fair and impartial and has nothing to do with your funding, so that you really know what needs to be applied to your child's individual circumstances. And that can be expensive. And there are a lot of families who say, I just can't do that. I don't have the funds to do that. Well, Autism Care and Treatment Today is a wonderful organization that has the potential to give grants for that kind of thing, as well as fencing. There's their website. So that's Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson, and she joins me on Wednesdays at 11 o'clock so that we can do Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. She's going to be here with us in a few minutes. I understand she's been held up, but that's okay. She's worth the wait. She is absolutely worth the wait. Since we have a couple of minutes, I'm going to go ahead and go to one of our other sites to read what some of the rest of you have written about the question of the day, which was, what is hardest for your child? So looking here. Okay, another person who is saying shoe tying. Shoe tying is one of the hardest things. And it's interesting because we had just gone through a phase. I shared with you guys that my son had a hard time tying shoes too. If you stop and think about it, I've already shared today that he had a motor visual problem, that the muscles had to be strengthened, and there's a part of that to the shoe tying. It's also a lot of fine motor. You have to be able to manipulate your fingers in such a way that you actually can hold on to the laces. And so the first time around when we were teaching shoe tying, it was hard for him. Oh my goodness, it was hard for him. But we kind of, diligently plowed through it and got him to the point where he could tie his shoes, and we were successful. But it had been such a thing that I think kind of subconsciously, the next time I bought him a pair of shoes, he picked a pair that had Velcro, and I, because I don't always have the highest mommy IQ, said, okay, because I was like, I just really don't want to deal with it, I think. And I don't think it was that conscious though, but subconscious, I think that's exactly what it was. And then the next pair of shoes was Velcro as well. So this last time that we went to buy shoes, and he picked out this bright blue pair of shoes with bright yellow laces that he just wanted more than anything else under the sun. And we got them, and he went to put on his shoes, and he said, you're going to have to tie my shoes. I said, no. You learned how to tie your shoes 2 years ago. Well, it hadn't been maintained. And we will see with our children that if we don't do a skill and give opportunities, that skills go away. So we had to go back to the drawing board and do the shoe tying, and which we did in a very specific way this time. time chaining and just having him do individual parts. So he's tying his shoe like a champ now. But Emily and I just came back a couple of weeks ago from the ABA International Conference, and while we were there, they have poster sessions, excuse me, where it's, you know, like a football field long, and they did this several times a day, where people stand with a big poster that shows what their research is, and you can go up to them and they'll explain their research to you. Fascinating. And we have a bunch of those interviews that are in the process of being edited to show you down the road. But one in particular that really caught my attention was two women who had done research on tying shoes. And basically, they were looking at how to make it more efficient, that they had done a bunch of research that if you taught tying shoes in a specific way, that it was going to take a certain number of trials for the average child, and they were trying to decrease how long it would take to teach shoe tying, streamline it, really streamline it, and it was fascinating. We got it on videotape, this method that they have of tying shoes that I wished I'd known about, can I tell you? But really fascinating. They just added a couple of things to it that made it that much simpler. In fact, one of the things that they did, because you know, in the first shoelace, you make the first loop, and you know, it's a little bit hard for the child to figure out and to make it close to the knot. And what they did was put 2 pieces of tape on the appropriate place in the shoelace and said to the child, bring the 2 pieces of tape together. Whoa, so exciting. So they got into a habit of you didn't have to explain to them to do it by the knot. Wished I'd known about that, and we'll have that video for you in the coming weeks. I'm told that the wonderful Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson is in the house, so we're going to take a short break and we're going to ferry her in here so that we can start Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Stick with us, it's bound to be exciting.
When Maddie was diagnosed, I'll be honest, I was very ignorant on what autism was. I knew that autism was basically something that hit boys at the age of 2 to 3 and shut down. And sometimes you think of the typical Rain Man movie. And with Maddie, she was doing all the same signs and symptoms of a typical child with autism spectrum disorder.
Stand up.
She didn't even acknowledge us coming into the room. She had barely any eye contact. She didn't interact with her sisters. She didn't really do anything. She just basically lined up her toys and that was about it. We have a team of 7 volunteers, or 8 now. We have 8 volunteers, including my husband and I. And I'm the team leader, and so I do all the curriculum and get everything ready each week.
Jana was downstairs until 11 o'clock at night working on curriculum, going through 2 different textbooks. And then we, as a group, meet on Monday nights, and we would go through what the curriculum was from Jana. And a lot of times we would go, well, how exactly do you do that? How do you sit her at the table and do this trial base? What Skills has done for us, it's taken that away from Jana trying to figure out the curriculum for one. She can go down, or even our laptop, and she can sit down and through all these questions, it comes up with the different programs.
At least for me, it was a relief off my shoulders. I was worried that I might be missing something, missing a curriculum that maybe she needs to know, where Skills, they have every possible thing your child needs to know from 0 to 7. They have a program for that.
What noise is this?
Good job!
Every program that we did with her, I knew it was specific for what she needed to learn. Because before Skills, it was a lot of, okay, well, is that really age appropriate for a 2-year-old? You know, because it's not generalized. It's anywhere from 0 to 7. This is what your child needs to know. In most manuals you'll find. But for this, okay, yep, she should be learning this. And no, she's not 4 yet. She doesn't need to know that yet.
We are so fortunate that Jana was able to attend a conference put on by CARD that opened the door for Skills, and that there's no looking back for us.
We started using the program in November. It seemed like by January something just clicked, and she has completely kind of came out of her fog that she was in for quite a while.
I have never read a documented case on any child that has not benefited anything from applied behavior analysis. And now with this new skills and being, you know, like the E version of ABA, I can't imagine it doing anything harmful to their child. It's nothing but exponential growth for us.
To see her now, it just blows us away. I mean, we call her our little miracle child because in 7 months' time, she's just blossomed into this normal, functioning child. And suddenly, we joke about it all the time, like suddenly we have twins.
If you're even thinking about doing it, do it. Because the absolute worst thing you can do is do nothing at all. And even if you use this program and it's just a single mom or a single dad working in the evenings with their child, this program is going to benefit them. It's going to show you where they are, it's going to show you where they need to go, and it's going to show you what skills and how to get there. It is an online book on how to help recover your child.
Good morning and welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Nancy Allspaw Jackson, if I can get the name out.
And I'm Shannon Penrod. Sometimes it is hard to say our own names,
Well, that mine's a mouthful with
Yours
the hyphenation, yeah.
It is,
yeah.
but I love it. It's got a lovely ring to it.
Thank you, and I love your name.
Well, you know, and I decided not to hyphenate.
Okay.
I did not take my husband's name. I promised my dad that I would keep my own name, and I didn't hyphenate. And I couldn't. My husband's last name is Miller, so I would have been Shannon Miller, which, you know, there's a gymnast,
that's
an Olympic athlete that has a highway named after her. You can't really.
Yeah, well, we could go on and on about the virtues or pitfalls of hyphenation because, I don't know, everybody knew me as Nancy Allspaw for my whole life, and to then change to Jackson. But I'm happy with the mouthful, so.
The mouthful is pretty. It has a nice ring
Well,
to
thank you, and I'm happy to be here with you today.
I'm happy that you're here, too. I know you've been crazy busy. You're a very busy woman.
We're very busy. We have a lot going on at ACT today, lots of events. We have the Inclusion Film Camp starts next week. And we had Joey Travolta here, and we have, we're planning our golf tournament with Mr. Joe Montaigne, and we have the Speed Gamers are starting, but we're going to talk about that later. Let's get to in the news.
And you also, I saw that you announced your date for Denim and Diamonds, too.
We did. It's November 3rd.
So you're fabulous. You are very busy.
Well, we're very busy. I don't know about how fabulous, but we're busy.
You're the raising money woman.
Trying.
I said earlier, I always say about you, I'm so glad that we're on the same side of the fence, that I'm on your team, because I would not want to be on the opposing team from you. You're like.
Oh, I did get something new over the weekend.
What did you get?
Well, I've never been much for tattoos, but I do have a little tattoo here. It's a cross, but some people see it as a compass, which is fine. You know, compass is good. I got a tattoo that says warrior.
And very appropriate, might I add.
Every autism mom out there, I think, will relate. Warrior.
Wow,
so if ever I get, you know, it's still getting acclimated to my body. I guess some of it comes off, but warrior.
Warrior.
That's me.
Very appropriate.
It helps to keep me motivated.
Good for you.
So I acquired that over the weekend.
Good for you. I'm trying to think what I acquired over the weekend. Some groceries. That's what I got. You had a much more exciting weekend than I did.
I did a half marathon too.
Look at you. I did some laundry. This is the difference between Nancy and I. My life is staid and mundane, and you're out there living the high life, excited, running a marathon. I could run along with a water bottle for 5 seconds and go Nancy. That's about what I could do. That's tragic. We bought a treadmill for the dog. I can't even get the dog on it.
You bought a treadmill, or you're kidding?
Well, we went to a garage sale and got a treadmill, and I can't even get the dog on it. We have video of us trying to get the dog on it.
Can we show that?
Yeah, I'll bring it in. It's pretty hilarious. I want to get on America's Funniest Home Video with that.
I can get you on. I have a connection.
There you go. That's my son's favorite program, you know. I'm going
to get you there. Ben DeBona's on our board, and Tom Bergeron, as you know, got the Activist Award last year from Denim and Diamonds. We'll get you there. Oh, Jim is so in the audience.
Well, because I know they have an age range, though. We'll have to talk.
Okay, we'll talk.
He might not be old enough.
We'll talk.
But it would make his day.
We'll get him to meet Tom.
That. Oh,
okay.
That would be a very big deal. Okay, so we have things to talk about, though. We haven't seen each other in a while. Can you tell? Nancy and I are like,
we're
so happy to see
up.
you. Okay, so new study that came out, which I think is really important for all of our families to be aware of, suggesting that siblings siblings of children who are on the autism spectrum need to be monitored closely, because even if they don't qualify for a diagnosis, that their incidences of having autism-like symptoms moving throughout their life are going to be significantly higher. And I think so much of the time when families have, when you have more than one child and one child's on the spectrum, so much attention gets drawn to that individual child.
Right.
And this study is suggesting, they looked at 508 high-risk siblings with no ASD diagnosis, and then 324 low-risk control participants with no relative with ASD were tested, and those younger siblings of a child with ASD had significantly higher ASD symptom severity scores and significantly lower levels of developmental functioning.
But not necessarily full on.
Right.
They wouldn't qualify for a diagnosis.
Right.
Okay. I saw it said things like decreased back and forth play and pointing to objects of interest. So, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they would qualify for an autism or even Asperger's diagnosis.
Right, but if you see a skill deficit, it's something that you want to shore up. And if you're already in this neighborhood on this journey, you're going to gain some skills with your other child that could potentially help that child in their life.
Okay.
So something to really monitor, and that, we see that a lot of these kids who don't get the diagnosis, in fact, in the new DSM-5, one of the things that gets changed is that instead of having early onset, that they're saying that in some cases the symptoms may not become present until the social circumstances warrant seeing them.
Okay.
And so keeping monitoring, because it may be that these children later on will qualify for Asperger's or something like that. But in any case, if they're having a skill deficit, let's monitor it and give them the help and the support that they need so that they don't feel left out twice.
Well, that brings up funding, obviously.
Yes, obviously.
It's hard enough to get treatment for our kids that have a full diagnosis. How are these children that maybe have skill deficits going to get help in these areas? I mean, is there going to be any funding for anything like that?
Well, with insurance reform, it's going to be interesting to see, but a lot of what we hear from parents is that you're having an ABA provider come to the house and you feel bad for having your child who doesn't have autism participate in the therapy with the child who does.
Right.
Maybe not such a bad thing. Yeah, we have floaties. We have gremlins and floaties in the area. There's a little feather there. You have to look like the two craziest women in the world. Right. But in any case, maybe not such a bad thing to have your other child who's not on the spectrum participating in the therapy. Maybe it's really beneficial for them
I have to say, my friends that have typical kids, when they come over and there's a therapy session, they love it. They're like, ooh, let's go have a glass of wine because the therapist is here to do a supervised play date. Because their kids pick up good things.
They do pick up good skills.
They learn how to share.
Yes.
They learn how to express, ask for things appropriately. Yeah. And I have one mom in the neighborhood who calls me up, can so-and-so come over for a play date? Is there a therapist there?
Yes. Yeah, it's interesting because sometimes you have people who are reticent about it and other people who are like, oh, it's like a really good nanny. And
not a nanny, I tell them.
Not a nanny at all. Yeah, I have one good friend who said to me, oh, you're so lucky that your son has autism because you have all that free childcare.
Yeah, does she know that you have to be there when there's a therapist? It's not like you can go get your nails done.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. People get it and people don't get it.
Right.
But in any case, if you've got another child on the spectrum, make sure that they're being monitored as well.
All right.
Really important. And then you've got something there.
I do, and I'm not gonna read it verbatim, but I received this in my inbox on my email and shared it with you, and I know you got it as well.
Yeah.
It's been 2 months since the CDC released the shocking results of the latest study of the prevalence of autism. That is 1 in 88 Americans, 1 in 54 boys. Peter Bell, who is the executive vice president for programs and services at Autism Speaks, has said that the federal response is extremely inadequate at this point. We need a national plan to meet the challenge. It's a public health emergency that demands urgent action, and we have not yet received a coordinated strategic approach to autism. There was a $21.3 million annual appropriation authorized under CARA for the CDC to continue tracking autism prevalence, but the appropriation is could be jeopardized because of politics and debates over its merits. And the Affordable Care Act of 2010 is also in jeopardy. So there are a lot of concerns from Autism Speaks, which is, very big on the legislative side, that the White House has not rolled out a bold new plan for fighting autism, similar to the new plan for fighting Alzheimer's that they had commended in Spirit and Purpose. That is the National Plan for Addressing Alzheimer's Disease. It was launched in 2011 and has already resulted in a large infusion of additional funding, $150 million, to support research, provide education, and public awareness. And last week, Health and Human Services Director Kathleen Sebelius announced even more actions for Alzheimer's, including 2 major clinical trials, development of training clinics, new public education campaign. We need a similar campaign for autism, and I am joining Peter Bell in asking, we are joining Peter Bell in asking for this national campaign and program to support this epidemic. We do not have an adequate response from the White House. I have great confidence that President Obama cares enormously about this situation. I know he has a top-level aide that has a child with autism that has been very involved with this.
He has a top-level aide who has a diagnosis as well.
He does.
It was featured in Newsweek a couple of years ago, but does have somebody on the staff who has or had a diagnosis themselves, which I found very interesting.
Well, I think it's time that the White House and the federal government and Congress comes together. We need a lot more attention to this because the potential side effects results, side effects is the wrong term, but the fallout that could come from this for our economy. And don't think it's not an economic issue, folks. It is up there with illiteracy, children's obesity, diabetes, higher, because we have so many kids on the spectrum that will not find work and will not go on to higher education if we don't get them more help. So let's get with it, federal government, White House, let's do it.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that and the article does say that there are people who've been taking steps and doing things, but is it enough and is it quick enough? Because I'm ABA background, I always want to remind that there are people that we want to reinforce.
Yes, we want to reinforce, and I agree with that.
That there are people who are doing some things, but the problem is there's so much bickering on side things that autism is getting caught a little bit, that everybody supported, everybody across the board supported re-upping that the CARA Act last year and appropriating those funds. It was $21.3 million, which is nothing to sneeze at, but it's not as much as it was for Alzheimer's.
Not as much as we need.
And because they were taking action in a very specific way, in an unprecedented way, included something in legislation that dealt with autism and the funding in what is termed the Obamacare, and because there is a political issue about that right now, that they might be making that
a political issue.
Well, it is a political issue, and there are people who are fighting right now, taking it to the Supreme Court to deem it illegal. And should that happen, that funding, which was never a part of that before, that's why it's in jeopardy. So I would certainly like to see everybody stop bickering about things that have to do with autism and get on one page together. And I think that's really what this is saying. Some people are doing some things. We need to support those politicians and really have a call to action. My question is, for these people who got the Alzheimer initiative, it had to have been people. And, you know, and how did they do it? Because that's what we need to be doing. And I'm hoping that Autism Speaks and Peter Bell that's what this call is, so that we all gather together and say, you've got to have this. Super duper important for all of our kids.
Very important.
And for people who think it doesn't affect them because they don't have a child on the autism spectrum, guess again, because they have a right to services in the classroom, and if you're wondering why your school doesn't have any funding, it's because legally they have to give support to those kids. So,
and the earlier these children get intervention, they may not need an aide. They may not need to go to special day class. They may not have a diagnosis of autism after several very early intensive years of ABA therapy. This can happen. This is not stuff we're making up. This is real. So while I see the need certainly to support Alzheimer's legislation, even though my father doesn't have it, I can see the drain on our public system. And I have friends who are in the heartbreaking situation of having parents with Alzheimer's and grandparents with Alzheimer's. You can see the effect it has on the economy. And it's common sense. It makes good sense, and we need to take care of our children. You know, we talk about all the things going on overseas, the aid that goes there. We have an autism epidemic, people. Take care of the epidemics at home first.
And we'll keep you posted about suggestions about what you can be doing at home, who to write letters to, because we need to have movement. I think we're all in agreement about that. But on a lighter note, we have a guest who's going to be joining us after the break.
I'm excited.
I'm excited too.
I met her at a conference. Down in Chicago. And she was delightful. And we spoke a great deal, and I told her we wanted to do cooking because she has a great program. Her name is Gabrielle Kaplan-Mayer, and she's going to be joining us after we take a break, right?
Okay, and we're going to take on cooking with our kids on the spectrum, so stick with us. Welcome. I'm here today with Cecilia Knight, who is the Director of Training for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and today we're talking about how to keep kids healthy.
I think it's really important for, of course, every child to have a pediatrician that the parent is comfortable with and that the parent is seeing regularly, someone who's an expert on autism, who understands the issues related to autism.
A lot of kids who are on the spectrum are a little bit obsessed with one area of food. Any suggestions?
I think it's really difficult for parents because many of their children either self-limit or they don't like certain textures. Their pediatricians, after testing them, see that they are deficient in iron and other nutrients that are so important. And so it does reach the levels where many parents need to seek help. Maybe from something like SOS, Specialized Outpatient Services, or another feeding clinic in their area. Someone who can address specifically, how do I get my child to eat this texture? How do I get my child to eat something other than French fries?
So what advice do you have for parents in terms of realizing what's the autism and what's something else that has to be addressed?
As we all know, every child is different, and from one child to the next on the spectrum, their symptoms are different, and what they struggle with medically is different. You do run into a problem with many physicians saying, well, that's just symptomatic of autism, and so we're not going to treat it. And I think it's really important to be sure that if they need to see a neurologist to address seizures, that they're getting that done. If they need to see a nutritionist because of the food issues, that they're getting that done, all while being treated by a pediatrician who maybe can help oversee that. But I think it's not a great idea to dismiss everything as that's just autism.
I always try to imagine a child trying to do therapy while they've got all these biological things going on, and how could they possibly concentrate?
Right. Well, our clients are just like you and I. It's very difficult to concentrate if I have a headache or if I have an upset stomach. And so I think it's really important to first give the child the opportunity to feel better, whatever that means for that child, because again, each child is very different. But I have had children that once you address a specific food allergy, then the symptoms of stomach pain or, a sty in their eye that wouldn't go away or constant diarrhea, until we addressed that medical issue, it's very difficult to concentrate on treatment.
Sure.
And then once they could address those issues, then treatment, went more the way we were hoping it would go.
Absolutely. And there's all kinds of things that would come under that heading, right? If they had sleep disorders, we already said food allergies, but what about vision problems?
Absolutely. The hard thing is, depending on the child's ability to communicate, sometimes it's difficult to have vision tested or to have hearing tested. So working in combination with someone who could help expose the child to the contingencies that would be in place, for example, for a vision test, and practicing or being prepared may help in those situations, but it's definitely a real issue.
Wow. So maybe even using your ABA program to practice for the vision test.
Right. It's very difficult for parents to find a pediatrician often that they connect with, but I think I encourage them to keep looking for a pediatrician who has specific experience and has other clients maybe with autism, and they have a good rapport with other parents. Someone who can listen to their concerns about sleep or about seizures or about eating and not dismiss them. Because, sometimes we uncover things that are surprising or that were unexpected, just like with the rest of us. So it's important to keep looking for answers, I think, to all of those issues.
And the healthier they are, the happier they're going to be, and the quicker they're going to learn.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Nancy. And we have a very fun segment today. It's always good to have some fun.
Yes.
With us is Gabrielle Kaplan-Mayer, and she is an expert on cooking with our kids. And she has authored a children's cookbook. It is called The Kitchen Classroom, 32 Visual GFCF Recipes to Boost Developmental Skills, which is so exciting because we're talking about developmental skills and ways to encourage those in the kitchen.
Yes.
And have your child cook with you. So welcome, Gabrielle.
Thanks so much.
It's great to have you here with us. This is a topic that gets talked about a lot because no matter if your child's on the spectrum or not, you got to put 3 meals and snacks out in addition to that every day. And it's important. We know nutrition is important, and our kids sometimes are picky eaters, but you're advocating that we take the children into the kitchen with us and make it a bigger experience. Is that right?
That's exactly it. And, I started cooking. My son is 9 now. We started cooking together when he was 4. And at that time, it was actually, we started when I was doing an RDI program with my son, Relationship Development Intervention. And our therapist was looking for ways to get George to do back and forth with us. At that time, he had very, very limited attention span. If he could focus on something for 30 seconds to a minute, it was really a big deal. And so I was really skeptical at first that we could have longer back and forth activities. And she actually suggested cooking. I was really taken aback, even though I love to cook. And the first cooking experience, he was so engaged. He was a really active participant. He had fun with it and connected. And I said, okay, we're going to dive into this.
And so how did you get from there to doing a cookbook?
It was a very gradual process. We started cooking together about, maybe once or twice a week. And I started with really basic, simple activities like measuring dry ingredients and pouring them into a bowl. So in the kitchen classroom, I have 4 levels of recipes, and one of them is really basic trail mix, where you're measuring your nuts and your raisins and you're dumping into the bowl. So we started with really simple activities that were helping him to focus and to work on fine motor skills. And then gradually over time, we added recipes that had more steps. And I started realizing, because my son is a visual learner and can identify so many things through pictures, that if I made pictures to go with the steps of the recipes, he could follow the sequence even though he wasn't reading yet.
Awesome.
And you had his little sister June's help.
That's right. So when we started, she was 18 months old.
Oh.
And it was so sweet, because I would have like a step stool where he would stand at my kitchen counter, and she would sit right up there on the counter. Oh. And he would take a turn stirring, and we'd pass the bowl to her, and she would take a turn. And so it was this way to develop a back and forth between the two of them. And to this day, it's one of my favorite activities that I can do with both of the kids together. And now she's 6, and she can model a lot of things that he's still working on, like waiting for your turn, that are really important.
That's just great. Tell us about some of the other benefits that they can get from this experience, from our children, that our children can get from cooking, children on the spectrum specifically.
Sure. So I think one of the really big pieces is that all of our kids have intense sensory needs. And cooking is one of those experiences that's a multi-sensory experience. You have your olfactory sense, where you're smelling the different spices and aromas and fruits and oils. And you have the tactile, where, you know, you have some things that are gooey and sticky and some that are dry and floury. And cooking's a way to practice getting used to all those sensations. So my son tends to be a sensory seeker. He's always looking for that input. So cooking's a really appropriate way for him to get it when you're pounding out a dough and kneading with your hands. And I've worked with kids who are really, you know, sensory avoidant and don't want to get gooey or icky stuff on their hands. And so the process of practicing, first with a long spoon so they're far away but still stirring, and then gradually become more comfortable and get closer, and, you know, maybe a little bit gets on their hands but they don't freak out. So working on sensory stuff is a great thing through cooking. And in the book, we identify all kinds of different developmental skills and how you can use cooking to work on all of those. So everything from fine and gross motor to communication and language, which is so important for our kids, reading, math, science, and maybe the most important, social skills.
Okay, yeah. Gabrielle, you know what? You can sit back just a little bit.
Oh,
we're starting to. There you go.
Now we can see more of you. That's awesome.
We can see more of you.
When you're going into the kitchen to work with your child, sometimes it can be really overwhelming, and there are lots of different things to keep track of. What are some really key things that we can remember as parents that will set us up for success when we're in the kitchen with our kids?
That's great. So I have a whole chapter in the book that I call Framing the Cooking Experience, which is really you as a parent thinking about how you set this up to work for your child. And it includes everything from the real basics, like look at how your space is organized. In my case, I don't have a really big kitchen. So sometimes we come into the dining room table to sit down and work and spread a lot of things out. Getting rid of the clutter. You know, I know my son gets visually distracted. So if we're in the kitchen and there are lots of clutter and dishes around, he'll be distracted. But if there's that clean surface, he can focus much better. And frankly, I found that's much better for all of us to try and keep things clutter-free.
Absolutely. I'm the same way. Clutter,
yeah,
and I get
clutter
bogged
makes
down.
me crazy.
But I still have it.
I know, but it's something to work on, right?
Yeah,
and to notice the difference for your child between.
Well, sure, it calms us when we have, when we have a nice space. It's calming. Junk on the outside equivalent to junk on the inside, right? So
and junk on the rear end, too. They say that, too.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. We should mention, how can people get your book so that they can be working on these things with their child?
Sure. So feel free to come to my blog, which is Kitchen Classroom for Kids, #4kids.com. And there's a link to Amazon where you can just click away and order the book, or look at Amazon, or you can request it from your local bookseller.
Okay. Kitchen Classroom for kids.com.
You got it.
And your book, it includes GFCF recipes. For viewers who are watching, that stands for gluten-free, casein-free. And if you have a child who is not on the diet, and all of our children are not, although the three of us,
have children,
are.
all of ours. Wyatt's on the diet, Jim's on the diet.
And in some cases, you know, I mean, it's absolutely essential. It's something that you should talk to your doctor about, see if your child is in a position that they could benefit from the diet. But we should point out that's not all children. So if you have a child who's not on the GFCF diet, are you still going to enjoy these recipes?
Oh, absolutely. All my recipes are really simple ingredients, and they're good for the whole family. So lots of, you know, just easy entrees, a meatball recipe, chicken breast saute, so that, you know, I think a lot of times we're working so hard to make meals for our kids and meals for ourselves, and I just like to simplify everything and make really good, simple food out of whole foods that everyone will enjoy, whether you're doing GFCF or not.
I love you saying out of whole foods, because one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten when it comes to food is don't eat things that your grandmother wouldn't recognize.
Yes.
And that's from Michael Pollan's Food Rules, which is a big bestseller, you know, a slim volume of things about how to be healthy and avoid fad diets and if you go, but it's amazing what you would say. My grandmother wouldn't know what the heck that was, because it's over-processed and it's over...
That's right. And if you can't read the ingredient, you know, if you're struggling to read the ingredient on the label, do you really want to put that in your body? So I keep things very simple and natural and not very processed.
And that's also a good way... This might be a good way to introduce GFCF foods to your child. Some people say, well, it's so limited, and I don't know if they'd like them. I think a lot of it is the way they cook them and present them. Don't you agree,
Absolutely.
Shannon?
And it's funny because people think of that kind of thing as being limiting, and yet I think it's the exact opposite. When people come and see my child, the way he eats, his diet is so much more diverse than their child.
Yes, who are eating chicken nuggets and Cheetos.
Which actually, Gabrielle, we had a question a couple of days ago from a parent who said, my child is only interested in eating pizza and French fries and chicken nuggets. What kinds of things? And I know I had some advice, but I'd love to hear from you what you recommend to families to help get their child to eat more healthily.
Well, I relate to that. I share in the book our family story, and my son went from being a toddler who ate fruits and vegetables, his favorite food. When he was 15 months old, I have pictures of him eating an avocado, to being a 3-year-old child who would only eat goldfish crackers and pretzels. And it was really scary because I knew he wasn't getting the nutrients that he needed. So we gradually, you know, not dramatically, we just gradually cut out those flour-based, wheat-based products and started in a small way introducing vegetables and fruits. And so he loved, his first vegetable that he was willing to eat was red pepper. So for about 6 months, he had a few slices of red pepper with every meal. And then gradually we added cucumbers and carrots and celery to where now he likes to eat a wide variety. But interestingly, as we were taking the gluten out, he started to, his palate changed, and he started to take protein. In those days, you know, now he's as I said, we make chicken saute, we make meatballs, we make salmon. And back in the day, he wouldn't even eat any kind of protein. I use nut butters a lot. And it sounds scary for the parents, but actually, as you pull some of the things out, try pulling out some gluten and dairy, and introduce in some fruits and vegetables and proteins, and the children are generally more able to tolerate them and begin to enjoy that.
That's great. I'm getting hungry.
Me too. Yes. And you know, Gabrielle, I had a very, very similar situation with Wyatt. At first, when I took him, when I decided to go GFCF, I thought he'll never eat any of this food. I'm taking away all the food he eats because, you know, we're talking goldfish and bread and potatoes and chicken nuggets. Yeah. So I thought, how is he ever going to eat any food now? Well, the slow but sure is the way to go, because we started introducing green beans. Now, green beans are his favorite vegetable. He'll eat them constantly. And then carrots, and then celery, and then a few other vegetables. So by doing it slowly in conjunction with the preferred foods, and then certainly foods like chicken nuggets are easily made GFCF.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he also would not eat any proteins aside from the chicken nuggets, and now he eats a variety of proteins. So you're gonna. I would like to encourage parents to really bring in these foods, these healthy vegetables, because you may think you might not be able to do it and your child won't like it, but by reinforcing with the preferred food, bringing it in slowly, being consistent, it's like any good way of doing therapy.
Absolutely.
You will get positive results. I'm confident of it.
Absolutely. And you can use this wonderful book as a guideline. I love that it's visual.
Wonderful. I love that it's visuals.
Well, I want to know, what are you working on next? Have you got another cookbook in the works?
Oh, thank you. So what I'm doing right now is on my blog at kitchenclassroom4kids.com, I actually feature a recipe of the week, so that for the families who've made all 32 recipes in Kitchen Classroom and love them and had fun with them and use them again and again, I always have something new. And I just recently put up a downloadable ebook. It's $5 and it's 45 all gluten and casein-free recipes called ABC Fruits and Veggies for Me. And it takes you through the alphabet through really fun fruit and veggie recipes.
I love that.
Great idea.
So like we were, you know, my son is still working on his literacy, and we're making sure that he knows all of the letters. And so we pick like a letter and work on it for a few weeks. And we did all of our apple recipes, and then we got to B and got our blueberries and bananas, and we go through the whole alphabet, and I promise you there's something for every letter.
That's awesome.
That's fun.
That's really, you're really clever, and I love this because we've been talking about this in preparation of you coming today all week, about how you've taken cooking and turned it into natural environment training, and you're bringing in all these different subjects, math and science and social language and language development. It's very clever, and the payoff is they're learning a real skill with side skills, and you're working on the nutrition too. So congratulations on being really clever.
Yeah, and
Thank you so much.
Very clever. And I'd like to, we'd like to put the book on the Act Today website for families with a link so they can get it. And, you know, maybe we'll do something, we'll get some of the books and do a giveaway with them. That would be fun.
Awesome. That would
yeah,
be
so
really
we'll talk to you about that, give away to some of our viewers.
Okay, that would be awesome.
Because we're always looking for fun things to do with our children, and when it involves food as well and getting them to eat healthy, I mean, that's a win-win-win all the way around.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for being with us, and we'll look forward to talking to you about that so we can give away some books.
Thanks so much for having me. It was great to connect with you both. Keep up the great work.
You too, Gabrielle. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So we have to take a little break, but then we want to come back and talk about something called speed gamers.
Yes.
And how supporting the speed gamers can help children with autism.
Video gaming. So if you've got any wizards on the computer that love video gaming, who are your kids, bring them to the screen, because
or your husbands.
We need their help. Okay, so we'll take a break and come back, right?
Absolutely. Be back in just a minute.
ACT Today, or Autism Care and Treatment Today, was founded in 2004 by several passionate parents who believe that access to early, effective treatment is vital for individuals with autism. Together with Dr. Doreen Graham-Pache, the world's leading provider of therapy for autism, this group created ACT Today to do just as the name implies, take action immediately to treat autism spectrum disorders.
A lot of families and parents and even physicians don't yet accept the fact that we are recovering children with autism.
In 2006, inspired by her struggle to get treatment for her young son Wyatt, television producer and author Nancy Alspaugh Jackson and her husband Reed hosted a backyard benefit for the foundation called Denim and Diamonds for Autism. Tens of thousands of dollars were raised, and in 2008, Alspaugh Jackson took the helm of Act Today as executive director.
This country has to come together to save a generation of children.
With a dedicated board of directors, a small but committed staff called the A-Team as in autism, Act Today is making a huge difference in the lives of children across the country. Grants that fund programs for behavior therapy, special needs schools and summer camps, medical needs like diagnostic tests and special diets, basic safety equipment such as helmets for children who repetitively bang their heads, and fencing for those who wander, assisted technologies and assistance dogs.
Hi, my name is Max, and I love my iPad too. It's so great. I can take photos.
In 2010, Act for Military Families became the first national campaign to benefit military children with autism.
I'm Joe Montaigne. As a father of a daughter with autism, I know the challenges that brings.
Act Today continues to educate and raise national awareness on the need for early and intensive intervention for an epidemic that affects at least 1 in 110 children.
I called on November 1st. And I'm like, how am I going to get notified? How are you going to let me know? And they ended up looking and they informed me that he had received the grant, which was like a blessing from above.
Act Today, fulfilling its mission of helping families with autism, one child at a time.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. That was fun, wasn't it? I liked hearing about I've got the wrong file here. Speed gamers. I loved hearing about cooking.
Yes.
And I loved, knowing that there's a whole bunch of new recipes out there that I can access because Wyatt loves to cook.
That's wonderful. Jem does to a certain extent. He wants to come in the kitchen, but he wants cameras to be rolling when he's cooking.
Oh, okay. He wants his own show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But then he always wants to demonstrate to friends how to make. We just had friends over the other day, and they had seen we made a video about making pink lemonade years ago, and they had seen it and they're like, let's make pink lemonade together. And so he got out all the things to show them how to make pink lemonade, and loves to demo things for people.
Okay, well, it's lemonade stand season out there.
It is.
You
can do one for Act Today.
I'm encouraging everybody that is viewing to do a lemonade stand with the proceeds going to Act Today. Let your kids do that. It'll teach them the beauty of giving back and volunteering.
I can sell carrots too. We just have had our carrot harvest from our garden. I planted way too many carrots.
Carrot soup.
Yeah, I'm thinking carrot ginger soup. And
carrot juice.
Yeah, I'm thinking
it's
I'm going to
delicious.
do something.
Do you have a juicer?
No, but you know what? I've been thinking about getting one.
We have a juicer. You should get one and drink carrot juice in the morning. Carrot and apple combined is delicious.
Okay. All
delicious.
Right. But tell me about Speed Gamers, because this is really exciting to me, but I don't know that I completely get it.
Okay,
so explain
let
it
me
to
explain it to you. Okay, the Speed Gamers are a group out of Texas. They're comprised of gamers. Now, by gamers, we mean those that play video games, all right? Now, these gamers are from around the world. Britt put them together, Britt La Raviere, in March 2008. And basically, they do gaming marathons. So they'll pick a game, like Super Mario, or I don't know. You know more games than I do?
Oh, well, yeah, my husband does.
Okay, what are some of them?
Well, my husband is on Mortal Kombat.
Mortal Kombat.
And Warcraft.
Okay, so they will pick a game, and they will do a gaming marathon, which is streamed live. So anybody can visit their site and watch them play, and you can pledge and donate.
Oh, wonderful.
And it's very simple. It'll be streaming live as you're watching these gamers playing, and you're watching the game on the screen as well.
Okay.
Okay? And then you can donate, and we, ACT Today, Autism Care and Treatment Today, is the beneficiary of this marathon. Now, it starts on Friday, June 15th.
Okay.
It goes till June 22nd.
Okay.
And you can see it online at well, you can go to our website there, at www.act-today.org, and we will have a live streaming video of the marathon. You could also go to www.thespeedgamers.com.
Okay.
Now, I think it's incredible because, let me tell you what these kids have raised.
Okay.
All right, in December 2008, in 72 hours, Shannon, these kids raised $5,923.
Nice.
In 2008, they raised, in 168 hours, over $50,730. In 2010, they raised, in 189 hours, $57,400. Now, if anybody thinks that all gamers are slackers and wasting time, I want you to know, never judge a book by its cover.
Right.
They could be raising money for charity. And I think these young gamers are truly remarkable.
Yes.
I think Britt LaRiviere and his fellow gamers in the Speed Gamers, I cannot thank them enough. They are in the Dallas-Fort Worth area of Texas. Please go on our website starting on Friday.
Okay.
And watch them, support them. They also do some hilarious things. Like they'll eat 10 Vegemite sandwiches in a row if you dare. You can do dares. For like you'll say, I'll donate $10 if you do this, and you know, they can do some pretty wacky things.
All right. What is the game this year?
It's a Mario deal this year. Yeah, it's a Mario. Pokemon, sorry, Pokemon. I was wrong. The Speed Gamers Pokemon Marathon. So if you like Pokemon.
And a lot of the kids do like Pokemon.
So please encourage your kids to go online if they're into gaming.
Okay.
Your family go online, support ACT Today. And, you know, I think you'll have fun seeing, I mean, these kids have raised $115,000 total for us.
Wow.
That's like the second or third highest single donation from an entity we've had. You know, we've had two above that from some very wealthy people. But these kids have raised more than any corporation has raised for us. So I think that's
pretty amazing. And so we can all be, you know, and if you're sitting there, I imagine you could give $1.
Of course you can.
Right. So you could give $1, but what you could also do beyond that is Facebook about this and tweet about it. That is what would really help this cause.
Yeah.
So again, they can go to ACT Today.
You can go to ACT Today. act-today.org, and on our website you'll see there, it's up there. Emily just posted it. And you can also, that'll have a link to the promotional video that you and I did.
Right.
And then you can go to the Speed Gamers site directly if you'd like to do it that way, www.thespeedgamers.com, all one word, thespeedgamers.com. You can go to them and you can see they're going to be starting on Friday morning.
Okay.
And you're going to watch them doing Pokemon and watch how many are gaming at once, watch some of the crazy stunts they're doing, watch the money coming in. I think that's my favorite part. I like to go out and say, how much have we raised now? Because I see, oh, that's going to be a grant to send a kid to camp. That's going to be a grant to get a child to build a fence for a child that elopes. That's going to be a grant for ABA therapy and skills.
Yeah.
That's going to be a grant for an assistance dog for a child that can't function without one, or or assessments, or tests, or school tuition, anything.
Yeah.
These kids are doing it.
Very, very exciting. Congratulations. And so again, www.thespeedgamers.com.
Okay. One word. And so I also want to say to parents, just because your kid's doing video games doesn't mean they're slacking.
No, they build a lot of different skills.
They do, and it's a whole new world, isn't it?
It is, it is. And even, for those of you who are concerned about it, one of the things that we have heard time and time again is that there's a social aspect to the gaming included in general knowledge. So for your child to be able to keep up with other kids on the playground, they have to have a little bit of an awareness of it. So consider it in terms of that.
So
monitor it.
Are you going to have Jim go on and take a look this weekend?
I will definitely have him go on and take a look. It's his father will have to pry off.
Okay, well, look, that's fine. You can, you know, I want as many watchers and as many people watching the Speed Gamers as can be possible.
And we'll Facebook and we'll tweet it. But we're at the end of our time. I just want to mention that even though this show is ending, the conversation continues. There's lots of ways to get in touch with us, especially through email. Wherever you're watching, whenever you're watching us, please take the time to give us your thoughts, your concerns, your questions.
And your ideas for segments. We always need those as well.
We absolutely love those. So you're seeing all the different ways that Emily's throwing on the screen. You can Facebook us, you can tweet us, lots of different ways to participate. We have some exciting things coming up in the coming weeks on the show so that you're not going to want to miss that.
Is Carly's voice next week?
I don't know.
Well, we'll see.
We should know that, but we don't. It's been a wonky day for us.
I know. We've had some fun, though. I showed off my new tattoo.
Yes, I love your warrior tattoo.
My warrior tattoo.
That's fabulous. I'm too much of a wuss to do something like that, but
I'm a little crazy.
You're a
but that's
wild
okay.
woman.
I'm a wild woman.
I said I'm glad I'm on her team.
I'm a rebel.
That's right, and we love that you're a rebel. You get things done, Nancy. Stick with her.
Well, I am excited to join you again next week, and as you always say,
until we see you again, give your kiddos a hug from us.
And as I always say, catch the joy as it flies. It's not here for long.
That's right.
Okay.
Bye-bye.